Welcome to the Norton Board of Selectmen meeting. Tonight is August 8th, 2018, 19. Well, I'm a little behind time here. Let the record show that 4 members of the board are present. Mr. Flaherty couldn't make it tonight. Also here is Town Manager Michael Units. Could you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our first order of business is appointments and resignations. And our first retirement of the Norton Fire Chief. So, Mr. Fire Chief, if you want to come up and...
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. So good evening. Thank you for allowing the fire department to be on the agenda this evening. Tonight, I've asked the town manager to make the final 3 appointments under my watch. It is important to note that all 3 appointments follow a natural progression and are made in accordance with the applicable civil service regulations. Acting Captain Robbins is being promoted to permanent captain. Captain Keene is being promoted to permanent deputy fire chief. And lastly, Deputy Fire Chief Sean Simmons is being appointed as my replacement to the position of permanent fire chief, only the 5th fire chief in the town's history. So I've got it as a different order in mind. I don't know if it matters to you, but if I could call Captain Robbins up. So Captain Robbins is a lifelong resident of the town, along with his wife Jamie and 3 children. He's currently about to enter his 22nd year with the department. Jason served for 4 years prior to that as a police and fire dispatcher in town. He served as the town's regional dispatch liaison since 2015, making sure that the Norton Fire Department's interests were protected going into the SEMREC, and he's did a great job with that, thank you. Captain Robbins currently serves as the Group 1 shift commander. He held the role of lieutenant for several years prior to that, having completed company officer training during that time. Captain Robbins is in charge of the department's fire investigative unit, having taken multiple training classes allowing him to make origin and cause decisions in which he may have to go to court and defend. Jason has worked closely with Chief Clark and the Norton Police Department in regards to the active shooter training for potential threats in the schools and in the town. Captain Robbins just finished an extensive 5-week fire prevention training class at the Mass Fire Academy. There are currently only a handful of department members that have completed this class, which will certainly better the department and Jason in his current and future roles within the department. So, Jason. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Conway, you want to read the official
Absolutely.
appointment?
From Mr. Units, Town Manager, I hereby notify the Board of Selectmen that, in accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 2B of the Norton Charter, acting in my capacity as the appointing authority, I have appointed the following individual as permanent full-time fire captain in the Norton Fire Department, Jason Robbins. The appointment was made on August 6, 2019, and will be effective on August 21, 2019, unless the Board of Selectmen votes to accept or reject the appointment prior to said date. I specifically request the Board's acceptance of this appointment with an effective date of September 1, 2019.
Okay. I'll take that as a motion. Can I have a second? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. And
Okay, congratulations. Okay, could I have Captain King come forward, please? You definitely need a bigger meeting room. You get the whole group of firefighters down below, hopefully watching it on TV at least, because there's a good showing here, which just shows you how much they're looking forward to the changing of the guard and stuff. And me going, I'm not. All right, so Captain King was born and raised in the town of Norton, graduated from the Norton High School class of 1976. A lifetime ago, wasn't it? First appointed to the call department in the summer of 1975, appointed provisional full-time firefighter in 1976, appointed permanent full-time in 1979, was appointed as a shift commander in 1991. He was one of the town's first EMTs back in 1977, and I do believe you still have the lowest EMT number of anyone in the department, correct? Yes. All right. You're proud of that when you sign that, I know you are. His wife of 38 years, Michelle, is also from a firefighting family from North Attleboro. He has 4 daughters, all married, and 13 grandchildren. So, and that's why he's got no hair, right? He brings over 44 years of firefighting and leadership experience to his new position, including acting for 13 months as the acting deputy in 2004. So, Captain Keen.
From Mr. Units, Town Manager, I hereby notify the Board of Selectmen that, in accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 2B of the Norton Charter, acting in my capacity as the appointing authority, I have appointed the following individual as a full-time Deputy Fire Chief in the Norton Fire Department: Benton W. Keene III. The appointment was made on August 6, 2019, and will be effective on August 21, 2019, unless the Board of Selectmen votes to accept or reject the appointment prior to said date. I specifically request the Board's acceptance of this appointment with an effective date of September 1st, 2019.
Chair will entertain that as a motion. Could I have a second? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Unanimous.
All right, Deputy Chief Simmons. So Deputy Simmons has been a resident of town with his wife Rebecca and 2 children, Sean and Caleb. He started in the fire service in the town of Dartmouth in 1993, and we didn't hold that against you, did we? He started with the Norton Fire Rescue as a firefighter paramedic at the end of 1998. He was a director of emergency medical services for 5 years, a captain and training officer for 6 years, worked as a deputy chief since December of 2017. He's the director of the Bristol County Technical Rescue Team since 2012 and done a great job with that. Instructor for the Mass Fire Academy for Recruit and Technical Rescue Program since 2007. Past member of the Federal Mass Task Force FEMA 1 team out of Beverly, right? He has his degree in fire science. He's an accredited fire chief through the state of Massachusetts. He's got his fire officer certification, fire prevention officer level 2 credentials, Incident Management Team Level 3 certification, and technical level certification. He's high angle rescue, structural collapse rescue, confined space trench rescue, and water rescue. And he's also been extremely instrumental over the past few years in doing some grant writing, which has gotten us some of the free money through some grants for things like our gear extractors and the radios and things like that. So I appreciate all that he's done on that. And when it hits the fan, you want him there just for the technical stuff. So, yeah.
From Mr. Units, Town Manager, I hereby notify the Board of Selectmen that, in accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 2B of the Norton Charter, acting in my capacity as the appointing authority, I have appointed the following individual as a full-time fire chief in the Norton Fire Department: Sean R. Simmons. The appointment was made on August 6, 2019, and will be effective on August 21, 2019, unless the Board of Selectmen votes to accept or reject the appointment prior to said date. However, I specifically request the Board's acceptance of this appointment with an effective date of September 1, 2019.
Second.
Okay, before we vote, I just want to ask, have you instructed the deputy on how to be brief at our meetings?
Just like me always is, bro.
Okay, now now that I've said my 2 cents.
Message received.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, just one quick comment before I step aside. The next meeting, I'd originally requested being at the media center. I just don't think it's anywhere near the capacity that we're going to need with the number of appointments and stuff. So I've asked Mr. Units and get the permission of the schools to use the Norton Middle School for that, where it can be broadcast live from the stage and stuff. So appreciate it if you'd endorse that. We'll see you on August 22nd. Thank you very much for everything.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And before I forget, I don't think we officially voted to accept the retirement of Chief Schleicher.
No, we probably need to do that, don't we?
So, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the retirement.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. How you doing, Chris?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to present you Nick Iafredi. I'd like to appoint Nick as a local inspector. Nick is a resident of Bridgewater. He's been in construction his whole adult life. He's worked for his father's company for 13 years. He has his own residential construction company for the past several. He's a few years shy of being a master carpenter in the field, and he's working on completion of his local inspectors through the state. So I would ask the board to appoint Nick as a part-time local inspector within the town.
Okay.
From Mr. Units, Town Manager, I hereby notify the Board of Selectmen that in accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 2B of the Norton Charter, acting in my capacity as appointing authority, I have appointed the following individual as part-time local inspector: Nicholas Iafredi. Said appointment was made on August 6, 2019, in accordance with the provisions of the Norton Charter, and will be effective August 21, 2019, unless the Board of Selectmen votes to accept or reject the appointment prior to that date. I specifically request the Board's acceptance of this appointment with an effective date of August 14, 2019.
Accept that as a motion.
So moved. Second. Sorry.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And just for clarification, this is it for a part-time,
Local inspector, he'll be
or-
doing residential inspections and code enforcement.
okay. But is it per diem, like, as you need it?
No, he's going to
Permanently?
be salary.
He has a,
He has a pay rate.
but he has a permanent schedule, like,
He's going to be on Wednesdays and Thursdays.
okay.
He'll be
That's all I want.
available. Yes, he'll have office hours posted,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So, I think we voted, correct?
Yep.
If not, yeah, we
Motion
voted.
and second.
Yep.
Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Congratulations. Thanks.
Okay. We now have a request to appoint Robert Briscoe as a member of the Temporary Building Committee, be the member on behalf of the Council on Aging.
Okay.
So, Chair will entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Robert Briscoe as a member of the Temporary Building Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have a request to appoint James Tenner as a permanent member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Yes, I don't think I saw any paperwork on that.
Not that I have.
James would be, James is an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals right now, and there's been a resignation of Lucas Wozniak, and James has agreed to become a permanent member.
So he'd move from an alternate to the permanent,
Okay.
okay? So Chair will entertain a motion to appoint James Tenner as a permanent member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And at our meeting approximately a month ago, we had tentatively made an appointment of Mr. Ralph Stefanelli as a alternate member of the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic District. And after Mr. Stefanelli left, Mr. Flaherty had asked to reconsider the vote due to the tenor of his response to the board member. So Chair will entertain a motion to reconsider the appointment of Ralph Stefanelli as the alternate member of the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. So we, in fact, have now rescinded the original vote.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As long as we're on the subject, I'd actually, why don't we, if you guys are in favor of it, maybe take a vote to just eliminate that position altogether. We don't need an alternate for that committee. We already have a planning board rep and a selectman's appointee.
I think if somebody came forward that was willing to go,
Just leave it as it is.
yeah, I wouldn't actively campaign to get somebody to come and donate their time when they can't vote when they go to one of those meetings. But if somebody wanted to go, even it's just to learn about it and possibly groom themselves as a replacement if our current permanent member were to resign to, pursue a different position for the town. I personally can't see a problem, but it's pleasure of the board. If everyone feels like we should eliminate it, it's fine with me. But that's my reasoning.
I have no inkling one way or another.
Just leave it then.
So, I mean, if it's all right, I'd just soon leave it that if we have someone, willing to donate their time and educate themselves by attending those meetings, I'd be more than willing to give them the opportunity.
Okay.
Okay? If there's nothing else, we'll move on to, yes.
I'm sorry, Brad, did you say, so at this point, the vote that previously took place has been rescinded and it's, that we have no alternate?
We have no
correct?
alternate at this
Perfect.
time.
Thank you.
We'll move on to licenses and permits. We have a application by Peter Gagney for a one-day beer and wine license for a private event at the Everett Leonard Park on September 1st, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The application's been signed off. It's a bring your own booze, and signed off by the fire department, police department, and I believe the building inspector. So if there's no objection, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the application by Peter Gagney for a one-day beer and wine license for a private event at the Everett Leonard Park on September 1st, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
This will be a roll call. Ms. Deli?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Next, we have an application from Jessica Feenan for the 27th Annual Rodman Ride for Kids to be held on Saturday, September 21st, 2019, and it starts at 10:15 a.m. to approximately 3 p.m. It takes place through several adjoining towns, and in checking the route, it will impact Norton on Bay Road. They will enter Norton at the eastern end of Bay Road and exit on the Taunton line. It's something that we've approved as long as I can remember. So, if there's no objection, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the application for Jessica Feenan for the 27th Annual Rodman Ride for Kids to be held on Saturday, September 21st, 2019, through the town of Norton.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have another application, and this one here always puzzles me, because it's an application for the Norton High School Cross Country Boosters Organization for a road race fundraiser for the cross-country team. It'll be held on Saturday, October 26, 2019. It starts at 9 a.m. and it goes till approximately 12 noon. And the thing that amazes, that I'm always puzzled by, is it stays on school property, so I don't know why we have to approve a parade or motorcade permit for them, but we always have, and I see no problem doing it. It's just, it seems kind of strange to me.
Town property.
But, I mean, it's not like they're on the roads, but, so, if there are no objection, the Chair will entertain a motion to approve the application of the Norton High School Cross Country Boosters Organization for a road race fundraiser for the cross-country team to be held on Saturday, October 26th, 2019, and start off time at 9 a.m. to approximately noon.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Steele, you might be more familiar with this?
You know what, I think what it goes to is, when they first started doing it, they did loop onto one of our roads, I think Seminary Way or
Oh,
something
oh.
back there. So I think it's probably just out of habit. They just keep doing it.
It's just, I assume they get, what is it, sponsors?
Yeah, so it's just like running like a regular road race where you, runners pay a registration fee, and then they have sponsors who, you know, so there's gifts or prizes or whatever at the end of the race.
No,
It's a pretty good fundraiser for them, though.
I was going to say that I've never been approached, but if a cross-country team member wants to approach me, I'd be glad to sponsor somebody.
Okay, good, I'll let them know.
Okay, so,
Do you want us just to contact them, drop them a call or a letter, just letting them know they really don't have to apply if they're not using town roads, so next year might save them a little work.
yeah, I mean, that's fine with me, as long as they're on school property, because school property is controlled by the school committee anyways.
I think we should ask them to notify us, though, so we can at least announce it,
True.
folks.
Yeah,
And then people will be aware, and if anybody else wants to support, or is it open for other people to run, or just the high school kids?
No, it's, high school kids do not run. They dress up as, I don't know if they're still doing it as a
this the
Halloween
zombie run?
thing, the zombie run, yeah. So the cross-country team would dress up, but they may have changed the theme a little bit. But it's like a legit road race. Runners come from all over, they pay their registration fee, they run it. They have a legit timing company that comes in and does the times as they come up across, so they do a pretty good job. It's a great fundraiser for them.
I think we should do it.
I had to carry my 3-year-old on my shoulders.
I think you're out of order.
Brad can be our coach.
Brad will be your official spectator in this.
Yeah, well, you can be the coach.
I can be the water boy.
So wish-
Okay, so, announcements is next. So, Mr. Conway, do you have any announcements?
Not that I see, unless I'm missing something here.
I didn't see any myself in our packets.
Yep. The only thing I want to highlight is there's a meeting for the rail trail on Thursday, August 15th at 7 PM. I'm not quite sure what the room, so I think the state's hosting that to try to drum up support there. So if you're interested in the rail trail,
Where that's going to be?
In the library, the
In the library.
community room. Yep, 7 o'clock.
Okay. Ms. Steele, do you have
Nothing,
anything?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Deli?
No, I don't have anything,
Okay.
thank you.
Ms. Units?
Could I just, while the health agent's here?
Yes.
Have him come in and just mention something about the
Sure.
Triple E situation and what's being done?
Chris, before you start, can I just say it was a welcome message to have your voice on there, not the automated one.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought so. So I just want to update you a little bit about the spraying. I did put out the Norton alerts today, and I'm basically going to repeat what I said earlier. They're going to begin the spraying tonight. As far as I know, the update on the website hasn't been done yet. Just before I came down here, I checked it, and they say it was going to be updated, but I still haven't seen an update. So as far as I know, it's still on. They're supposed to be going from 8 to 4, and because the update's not done, I still don't know what areas they're doing. I will say this, if you go on our Norton Board of Health website, you can go onto an interactive map where you can type your address in and search it to see if you fall within the spray area. And then eventually, when they make their updates and show the spray areas, you'll see what night you're going to be sprayed. So that being said, they're going to, from what I've been told, they're going to start tonight, they're going to go on to tomorrow night, and they may go on for a couple of nights after that if they're unable to finish. And then they're going to wait a couple weeks, and they're going to do a second round. Again, I want everybody to remember that this does not eliminate the threat of Triple E. So we still have to follow, best practices as far as, using mosquito spray, repellent, wearing long sleeves when you can. Try to avoid being out during dusk and dawn, and make sure we eliminate all standing water in your yard, and screens on your windows. Make sure they're still in good shape. So I just wanted to put that out there and let everybody know. Go to the Norton Board of Health website. You can click on the interactive map and go from there to see when you're going to be sprayed, if you're even going to get the spray. All right? Thank you.
Chris,
you.
can I ask a question?
sure.
Sorry, I always like to ask questions.
Sure.
I did look at the map that was out there. Do you know what the criteria was to define the zone?
So it was based upon the testing. I guess it's the areas of which they test, and then the hardest hit area is right down the middle of that zone. Basically, Easton, Raynham, Taunton, Lakeville, Middleborough, right down through Dayton, and then around us down to Rehoboth. Rehoboth's not quite as bad, so they're only getting partial spray like we are. But from what I'm being told, that's how they build it, and then they they have a formula for how far out they feel it'll reach out as a threat. So right now, we're still in the moderate threat area. The high-level area is that area I'm talking about, right down the middle, and I believe that's how they go by a formula off of that to come up with the area.
Do you know if there are any positive results within Norton?
There are no positive results in Norton. And the other thing I wanted to mention is this is the same spray that they used back in '06 and 2010 and 2012. And from what I'm being told, there is no risk, there's no health risks at all for this, for you or your pets. They do suggest, though, to not stand underneath it and go like this. They suggest that you go in your home and stay inside. You don't have to shut your windows, you don't have to shut your air conditioners off, but just stay inside. So if you hear the airplanes running low, get inside the house.
Great.
All right?
Look, Chris, I just want to say I really appreciate the proactive communication that you've been putting out. It's been great to see.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate it. I know a lot of people I've talked to have, so great job.
Awesome, thank you. All right.
Thank you very
Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay. Under new business, an update on the Reed Barton site. Mr. Carmichael. Good evening.
So again, this is our weekly update. So I was notified at 7 a.m. on July 29th that from the police that we had an unsecured building on Cross Street. So that means I have the only key to that door on Cross Street, so that means someone came from the inside. So I have some people still in the building. So that's a concern for us. On August 1st, we had the EPA was out there doing geoprobe, which is a drill. It's on a handcart, and they feel they have found the extent of the oil. They don't know exactly where they're digging, and they're going to be starting that as soon as Building K comes down. So that will Building K will come down after they do the abatement. That's going to start on Monday, the 12th. We have ESM, as we are under contract with them. They're going to be doing the interior building abatement. In a conference call today, they also have concerns about people in the building, and they will not be working in groups of less than 2, because they don't want to run into anybody. So
I'm sorry, Chris, what was that? They won't be what?
ATC, who's going to be doing the abatement through ESM, will not be working in groups of less than 2, because they have concerns about being in the building alone and running into other people.
Okay, thank you.
So that was their concern that they brought up today on a phone call. I'm going to be proceeding to court with counsel within the next 2 weeks to obtain a warrant to access the site and demolish the buildings. So that's already been drafted and sent. I've sent letters to a fictitious landlord that no longer exists, but we're dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's again. So EPA has requested that we secure the parking lot across Elm Street. That's that vacant lot, so that they can store their soil for when they take it out before it comes back from testing. So I've been working with police and highway. Highway made up signs. Police has notified the abutters and people that were parking their cars there. So they're going to be putting up fencing, straw and wattle, and covering the piles at night. But they're going to be using that. And that they told me they were going to be using it, and we're just working with them to secure it. I just want to bring up a concern we have about the Cross Street. When the construction starts on East Main, that is going to be used as a detour, or it has the potential. So I want to apprise you of that, and we have concerns. So we were talking about closing all of Cross Street, so we should consider, we need to consider talking about that in the future, so especially as we head into winter. Busing routes, first responder routes, so on and so forth.
I'm sorry, is that in respect to when the demolition occurs?
That's in, my concerns are when the East Main Street project starts, the road widening, the water lines going in, that they're going to be wanting to divert traffic up and around onto Cross Street. And with the start of the school season and Cross Street being closed down partially, it is a concern I want to let you know about now. So we are considering that.
Okay. Are there other routes to go around Cross Street?
Down Pine Street, up and around, it's a cut through, so I just want to
Yeah.
let you know it's,
To me, it sounds like we're almost going to be forced to use the Pine Street, Plain Street.
Yeah.
North, South Washington, or Birch Street.
Yeah.
Instead of using
the Cross Street.
North Washington,
Yeah.
Cross Street.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are options. It might be a little bit more lengthy, I don't know the exact mileage.
Right, it's going to be a longer detour, that's all.
Right, but it's something I think, just for safety, and I know, especially if you're detouring trucks down there, vibrations
Right.
might cause the buildings to collapse. I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but
No, I'm just apprising the board that there are concerns, so, especially with school starting back up in a few weeks. So, currently drafting a warrant article for the October town meeting for funds to remove the buildings on Cross Street only. That warrant will include also for the funding for CEC's mandated oversight, and also as per Mass Development's has advised us to hire a grant writer also that would help us immensely, because they know all the people, they know how to write, and would help us with future funding. So we're looking into that as well.
I thought that the CEC indicated that they can do
They do have a
writing.
grant writer on staff, Molly, and we could, again, this is open for discussion, future, to go through CEC and have them write all the grants, or hire the grant writer that was recommended by Mass Development. Mass Development has the larger pools of funds that we're going to be shooting for in March. So, again, open for discussion.
And what's the pool of funds specifically to support taking down the building and the abatement?
So yes, there's a number of funds that you've asked us to apprise a list. We have an Excel spreadsheet that Mr. Di Giuseppe has been working on diligently along with CEC, and I've actually asked him to come up and speak on that, because he's been working on it more than I have on that aspect. So Paul, can I have you come up and speak on that?
I assume that's the
Yes.
spreadsheet that's in our
Yes. Good evening, and Paul Di Giuseppe. Yeah, you'll have now in front of you a spreadsheet of potential grant sources that we will be applying for. I should just start by saying that, there's this is a draft, this is a work in progress, because basically due to the nature of grants, they can change every year, so the dollar amounts can change, the awards can change. So, talking with people from these agencies, they might, until the grant opens, we won't necessarily know what will be the award for this year. But working with CEC, we've put together, I've reorganized the spreadsheet into 4 basic groups of grants that we could use the money for. One could be for assessment and remediation, like we're still in assessment and remediation mode now. There are also funds for demolition of the buildings, also for future plans for the site, which is really important, and then also for infrastructure funding. So there are funds available for those. Right now, there is a fund, the cycle is open right now. It's for the Brownfield Redevelopment Fund from Mass Development. It's up to potentially $250,000 that we could use for assessment and remediation. So we could use a portion of it to help pay for assessment, I guess, with CEC, and then the remainder could be used for any potential remediation that's beyond what EPA and DEP are working on. So that grant needs to be submitted by August 30th. I've gone through and finished my first cut of it, but it's probably 75–80% done. But we need help. I need help from CEC and Chris and some others to make sure we get it done completely and accurately and done as well as possible. It's a competitive fund, and we just want to make sure we get it done the best way possible. And then we do have a couple of other funds that we expect will be opening up in the fall. One is for demolition that could fund up to, again, based on last year, was up to $500,000 potentially, but that number could change. So if anyone has any questions?
Paul, is it possible, can you add to this whether or not, unless they're all competitive, can you add to this whether or not they're competitive?
I believe they're all
They are,
competitive.
okay.
We are going to be doing a debriefing with, a brownfield debriefing with Jim Grant from the EPA this coming Wednesday. We're going to be talking more in depth about that, so that'll help us get ready for the next cycle. I don't want to cross our fingers or count our chickens, but we were, CEC was given favorable nods towards this next round, so we're going to be shooting for that one through them.
So is the first one that's on here for the Brownsfield assessment, is that the one that we already applied for? Because didn't we apply for 2?
Yes,
And 1 we did not receive.
right,
What's the
When
status?
we're doing the debriefing on that.
Okay.
right.
And then is that the first one on this list, is that the second one that we applied for that we don't know the outcome yet?
The second one, we are in the process of completing the application, but the first one, it's the environmental assessment. This is for assessment funding. So we may add to this back for the EPA targeted brownfields for remediation. We didn't have it on here yet, but I should have put it on here.
Okay, so the second one that we've applied for is not on this list, right? Because weren't we waiting to see if we,
I think that came back unfavorably, didn't it, recently?
EPA,
Yes,
a few months ago.
right.
Right, that one.
okay, so the 2 that we applied for that we talked about back in, I don't know, May or whatever, we were not awarded those. That's confirmed, okay.
Well, it was the one.
I'm not sure about the second, I can't speak on it.
Well, the second one is the assessment, and we need
So
to
it-
apply
okay.
for that. So we need to apply for that
But I
assessment.
thought we already applied, so Mike, did we apply for 2? I thought we applied for 2.
I think we did.
We
For the
did.
assessment as
CEC would have
well?
the status on that, so I can
Okay.
find that.
Okay.
We'll get that.
It sounds like it's the EPA targeted Brownsfield assessment that rings a bell to me.
It does, yeah.
That is the grant we applied for months ago that we did not get.
Okay, so then we just have to figure out what the second one is and what the status was. I thought we were supposed to know like a month ago.
Well, we're debriefing next week
Right.
on it.
Well, that's on the one that we know that we weren't awarded, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So, Mike, can you find out the status on the second one and then?
And do
We
we
can talk about
have
that.
funds available with CEC to help with the grant writing to finish off?
No.
The one you're talking about for
warrant
8:30?
in October will be for funds to continue with CEC as mandated LSP on site.
Okay,
So that's going to be part of the warrant in October.
okay.
It's going to
And
be coming to you.
this one that we're applying for with Mass Development does include assessment funding, so if we were to get awarded that, that would help
Okay.
with CEC's funding.
So how are we, Mike, how are we covering the expenses right now for E CEC?
We don't have any expenses right now that we're covering.
So their participation in the meeting a couple weeks ago, we didn't pay for that?
Oh, for CEC?
CEC, yes.
I don't know if we've received any, I'm trying to think of the last bill.
Mr. Zano was taking care of the billing on that,
I know,
where that stands.
yeah, I'd have to check and see when their last bill was, but anything from CEC, they've been paid up to date,
Okay.
so I'd have to see what their last invoice
I
was.
should mention, when John Kitchen was here 2 weeks ago, he came pro bono.
Okay, that's probably that, yeah.
Yeah, he did.
So CEC is not engaged at all at the time being?
I'm sorry, could you,
CEC is not involved in
CEC
anything?
right now, no.
Okay.
Right.
We do not.
Right.
but again, that's part of that, is the assessment remediation is to help us try to get that funding back. And I believe the discussion, part of what we're having next week is partly on the assessment, the EPA assessment fund for brownfields.
So Mike, before I forget, that's somewhat separate but still the same, can we find out from town council if there's any issue with what we've paid them and where we paid them from? Since that was coming out of a feasibility study for a project that was not
A
specific.
feasibility study that the article said engineering. So I would doubt town council will have.
Right, but
any
it
issue.
was based on a specific site that wasn't I mean, the study overall was for the buildings. I just want to make sure that there's no
And
issue that
I
we need
wrote-
to look
I
at.
wrote the article, and I put engineering in the article specifically because we knew we were looking at that site, and to cover the engineering costs, we have to have an LSP.
I understand that part. What I'm saying is that the site wasn't specifically tied to the project, right? Like we never voted to put that project on that site. So my question is, can you just ask them if there's any issues, if we should be looking at transferring funds from somewhere else for what was paid out of that potentially shouldn't have been paid?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not,
But the
I know- I know what you're saying.
but the
Yeah.
funds are expended.
I understand that, but
Prior year,
if we,
I
but if
mean-
we should have to pay back to that particular account, because it shouldn't have come out of that account, then we should know that.
Okay, we can check into that for you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, guys.
No, that's fine. Any other questions for us?
I've driven by there a few times, and I noticed, it's just out of place, there's a nice Mercedes SUV with a bright orange screen. Is that,
We believe that's in a butter.
Okay.
But
looking for an insurance payment if the building collapses?
it's not
on
our
it?
site. I
Okay.
can't
All
tell.
right, I was just curious.
I have posted the building,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done everything that I can legally.
Okay.
But until I get a warrant, which will be coming up, I can't take action
Okay.
Is it there all the time, Chris?
constantly. Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
it's right on Cross Street.
I
Just
see
somebody's
it.
just using it as a parking
Yeah,
lot?
it's just a parking
Yeah.
spot. It's not the danger area. It's another 100 yards down or so,
Okay.
as you know.
Right.
Where it's buckling out and bowing and the siding's pucking off.
It's on Cross, close to Elm.
It's right on the corner there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bright
no,
orange thing
Once
is
we
great.
get going, we'll definitely tag it and ask them politely to move, so.
Great.
Have we received any additional reports about the status of the building?
EPA was on site. I think I updated you last time. They have concerns about more of the roof structure on ENF collapsing. Other than that, I have not been in the building until I get a warrant. So I've been on site out back, working with EPA, checking Building K, getting that ready for abatement. I've walked it, took additionals per legal counsel's request from the outside of the building for the court warrant, but I have not been inside the building. It's not a place you want to walk around, so.
Right.
Especially with a family of foxes living in there.
Is the abatement, is that covered under the EPA costs?
That was the 49.7.
Okay,
that I
so
came- Yeah,
that's
so,
for
and then
K for them to do,
That was the interior abatement.
Yeah.
It's going to start Monday, and then the exterior abatement is coming through the bankruptcy funds from the court in 2015. I think the filing was in 2016. So those are the, DEP is monitoring those funds, and they're issuing it, and they have a private contract through ATC, who's going to be doing the exterior. They're also going to be doing the interior.
okay. And how do we feel right now? I know you mentioned Cross Street. How do we feel right now with the
I want them down tomorrow.
area? No, I know we want the buildings down, but like, how do you feel with the fencing in the area? Is it appropriate, adequate, like? should-
Again, the fall line would construe all of Cross Street, but I can't shut down Cross Street because of first responders, bus routes, local traffic. I just didn't feel it was necessary to close the whole road. If I see more movement within the building, then I will absolutely take necessary actions to move the fences out and close Cross Street.
Okay.
But right now, I'm doing everything I can. If you could give me the money I need, I'll have them knocked down as soon as possible. But I'm trying to follow and dot my i's and cross my t's. As you know, this is a process.
Yeah.
So I'm
Okay,
taking-
I mean, I'm just thinking that because you made the comment about the vibration, so when school's back in session, if we have a lot more of the buses going through there, I mean, you know, if it means that we have to reroute buses particularly for safety issues for the kids, then let's add on to their bus routes and talk to the school committee now. I mean, if you feel that way, it's, what are we, early August, so we have a few weeks?
It might not be a bad idea to let the superintendent know of our concerns.
All right, I'll
And-
apprise the superintendent, and I'll have a meeting with fire and police and express everybody's concerns, and we'll find the best.
Right, that
course of
way,
action.
if they can reroute the
Sure.
buses, it
And-
would be to their best
Yeah.
interests.
And then also too, I don't know if there's like a bus stop there, if kids hang out there waiting for the
I'll have to
bus,
ask the
right?
school. I'll find all that out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next update, so you're gonna keep working on the grant? The existing
Yes.
one? With the
Right.
expectation that you're going to file it by the 30th?
Right.
Okay.
We have to. And when we meet next week, part of that meeting will be hopefully closing the gaps on that application.
Okay.
It
Great.
shouldn't take them, CEC, much time to complete their portion of it. I just don't have their information.
I'll know more about the court order by the next time I see you, so.
Yeah, and that'll be important for this, because this, for
Yeah, most
that-
of these say the site control.
Right.
And that's-
what I've got
And,
being
and,
answered.
and we need to provide documentation that we have site control, so we might, depending on when the court gives the information, we might need to wait till the last day to submit, in hopes that we have court order allowing us to go on site, that we can show mass development.
Okay. Chris, can you explain that just a little bit? Because I don't know that we've, I don't know publicly that that's been explained about the court order and what that provides us and why we're pursuing it.
Okay, so there's a certain course of orders that I need to take on an abandoned building. When a building is first deemed abandoned, I have to go out and board it up, and we've done that, and that was actually started before I came to the town. And then, when the buildings were deemed unsafe, and I've done that a couple of times, working with the EPA, I first started deeming the buildings unsafe because they were working underneath the chimney stack that had a fatal crack that ran up through the middle of it, and they were working with heavy equipment around it. So I started deeming those buildings unsafe, and I had concerns about buildings along Elm Street. So I was working through the warrant for, they had access, I've been working along EPA's warrant, and I have authority to enter any site if I deem a building unsafe. So I have that purview under pursuant to Mass General Law 143, 6 through 14. So I've been working under that as well. But per council's advice, we now need to obtain this warrant so that I can have legal access to the site to take these buildings down. If the court finds that we entered the site and there's still some part of Reed and Barton Liquidators that's still an entity somewhere, which we do not believe it is, then they would have recourse against the town. So we are going, I've sent a letter off to the last known address of Reed and Barton, which was in Taunton. I did not receive a response. In pursuant to that, after that, council and I will go to court with documentation to allow us access to the site.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, guys.
Anything else?
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the update.
Okay. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read all these possible grants. I'm more confused than when I started,
For what, the grants?
the grants. Okay, a discussion and/or vote regarding the formation of a community preservation review committee. Yes, Mr. Units.
We have 3 people that have come forward that are willing to be on the committee. So I just wanted to see how the board wanted to establish the committee. First of all, the name, I'm assuming Community Preservation Act Study Committee.
Okay.
And then the charge of the committee would be to review all information on the Community Preservation Act and come back to the Board of Selectmen with a report on what they've found and possible recommendation for the selectmen to either support adopting the Community Preservation Act or not supporting the Community Preservation Act. We have 3, so I thought possibly have a committee of 5, and maybe 2 more people will step forward. But at least with 3, we would have a quorum to get started, and hopefully 2 more people would come forward. And I would think the establishment of the committee would be an appointed committee to complete the task and come back to you. So I don't expect that that's going to take 3 years, so I don't think we have to set a timeline, just a task.
Okay. And we're looking to pursue this because there is possible grant money and stuff involved with
There,
this?
there is some match. It's not as great as it used to be, but at least it would be a pool of, if adopted, it could be a pool of money that could be used for different activities in the town, parks, playground upgrades, things like that.
Anyone have any questions?
I don't think it's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea too, but I do have a question. Surprised.
Yeah, go for it.
Would this cover things like village center project, like things like that? Because it's still kind of like we're building it for more of a community core.
Yeah, I don't know, it would all depend. It would cover, say, the renovations we did on the town common, that could have been covered under the funds out of this. I know even like in Dennis, they renovated a church, a historic church with money, which shocked me that they were able to do that. But I guess they established that it was a centerpiece of their downtown, so they were able to do that.
Okay.
But when the committee studies it, I'm sure they'll come back with what actually you can use the money for.
Is there any sort of, this is not going to be the right word, but like marketing that we can do to get 2 more members on there? I mean, I know we have on the town website, there's something about the vacancies, right? Is there anything more we can do? To put it out there and maybe provide a short summary of what the Community Preservation Act can do? And
Well, if you appoint Sharon, we can get her on the case and get her to spread the word out there.
do you want to talk a bit about it? You can say no. Okay.
Possibly, maybe we could ask cable to insert something about not just this, but all the vacancies.
Oh, that'd be great,
Into
yeah.
their, their scrolling advertisements or upcoming events.
Sure.
I don't think we've ever tried that, have we?
No.
So why don't we see if we can't get a list over to cable
Open positions.
of open positions that we're looking to help us.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's something we've never tried. Maybe it'll work. And then that way Peter can read it and take care of us.
Right. And we have a Facebook page too, right? Town clerk has a Facebook page. And we could probably.
I don't
do
think the
some-
town itself has one.
No, but the
Different.
town clerk does.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get something there even on the main website and we can push it through other social media channels.
You noticed how that one went
I did.
over my head? It splattered on the,
Yeah, I heard the crickets.
Yeah, I think if we get somebody up there posting it, then they can share and spread
Right.
organically, get a bigger reach.
should we appoint Mr. Conway?
For Facebooking?
Yes.
So, do you
So-
want to appoint the 3 people that have come forward so far?
Well, first, I entertain a motion to establish the committee. We call it the Community Preservation Act Committee?
Study committee?
Study Committee.
Review committee.
Okay, that's good, too.
That's what's in the agenda. I don't know what's,
Okay, no, that's, okay, so Chair entertain a motion to form the Community Preservation Review Committee with 5 members?
Yes, so moved.
Okay.
second, third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now, we have 3 people willing to serve on this long-standing committee of 30 seconds.
Yes.
I think some of them are here, too.
Oh, are
Can't see
they?
that far.
All
So,
3 of them?
Paul's here, I think.
Do we have the, all 3 folks here?
Paul Felling.
okay.
Paul? Do you guys want to come up for a second? Sharon's like, no. And I can't, is the last one, is that Peg?
Thanks, Julie.
She said she couldn't be here?
Thanks. Yep.
Okay, so, welcome, thank you for offering to be on this committee, or, review committee. And, does anybody have any questions, or?
No, I think it's great. I think, thank you for taking the initiative to do this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us. as a town, and certainly, the struggles that we have with our budget, any additional funding sources that we could have to support parks and recs and things for the community to do, I think it's a great opportunity. So I appreciate you guys stepping up and filling these roles and seeing what's out there that we can leverage. Thank you.
Glad to do it.
Okay?
And get
So-
some friends involved, 2 more at least.
I'm trying very hard.
Okay.
Well, tell them we won't make them come up and speak in
Well, I
front
don't
of
know,
them.
after that, they might not.
No. Tell them that they can be silent members in the background,
Good deal.
okay?
So Brad, would this, they would not be bound by like open meeting law, right? Like they can meet on their own? Like how does that work? Because
No, they,
they
It
are
would-
bound by it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any committee or anything like that, that's a municipal appointment,
Okay.
has to be bound by the open meeting law. So they'd have to post their meetings and, you can just check with the town clerk and she'll help you through all that.
Are either of you familiar with that?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful learning process.
Yeah, the best thing is just to check with the town clerk and she can walk you right through it and how to post it and I'm sure that she'll help you.
She's great,
excellent.
yeah.
Yeah, she's very good.
She is.
Okay, and that being said, Chair will entertain a motion to appoint the 3 members. Paul, was it
Fiala, just
Fiala.
pretend the A isn't there.
Peg Dooley? Yeah, and Jennifer,
Sharon Rice.
Sharon Rice. I was gonna make Jen.
Hey, there's the
Right,
fourth.
there would be 4.
Jen?
She's not a resident.
Oh,
So, Chair,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
And
very
if there's
much.
anything we can do to help, let us know.
Can I just suggest, could we add 2 alternate positions in case more than 5 people come
Yeah.
forward? At least
Definitely.
Can we still do that?
make them,
Make a
I-
motion. I'll entertain a motion to make 2 alternates also on there in case there are more people interested.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thanks.
Did you guys
Okay.
catch that? No. So we just voted that you could have 2 alternates as well, so if we have more than 2 people come forward, you can have 2 additional. Oh, excellent. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Discussion on the articles for the fall town meeting. I know Ms. Deli
Yes.
had mentioned that to me.
I did mention it, and I don't know process, so I'm just going to start spewing out the things that I had been thinking about.
Yep.
The first being, I know there was some discussion, a lot of people have asked me about a change in the Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
And I think I emailed you, I could be wrong, but I think that's under the purview of a charter review, because the positions, the elected positions, and everything is spelt out in the charter.
I believe so, too, because it goes along with my second request, which Mike had reached out to town council on as well, for the change of the Industrial Development Commission to the Economic Development Commission.
Right. I
So,
mean, you can call yourself anything you want, but I think technically, to make those changes at town meeting, I
right.
think it has to go through a charter review committee. But I am definitely not a lawyer, and I can't tell you for sure, but that's my understanding.
Okay, I don't know what that entails, so
Well,
what would the process be for that?
I'll check with council on it.
Okay. But I figured if they're
No,
both
we
similar.
got it, I don't remember what it was, but
Yeah.
I'll check with her and get that to you.
Okay, I figured if they were both similar processes, then it makes sense to make the change, and I don't know if there are any other changes that,
for
may
like
benefit
committees.
as well through
Yep.
this one process.
Okay.
So the other thing that I've heard of, and I don't know if this falls within our purview or not, but one of the things was in respect to a sound bylaw. You know, there's a lot of discussion of that before that were, a lot of our neighboring towns have individual sound bylaws, and we don't have anything. I don't know if that's something that would come from the planning board, or if that's something that can be,
And I don't really know, would it be
Yeah,
planning board or,
it would. But department heads would have to do some research, and then Paul would bring it to the planning board for,
Okay,
So, I mean, we could at least mention it, have it mentioned to Paul that it's, we could request that they look into it.
okay,
And then when they've got something formulated, they could get back to us.
sure, sure. And then along with Paul, actually, we can give him two, because the other one is the cannabis zoning overlay
Okay?
to reevaluate the zoning for marijuana, both retail cultivation, retail and cultivation. And I did ask Jen, I actually put some things, she printed out a couple documents that I provided. One is from the Cannabis Control Commission from the state that talks about what we as a town would have to do in respect to a host community agreement. And then there's a sample host community agreement from New Bedford that I put in there, because I believe that along with the overlay that we would have to consider as well, if we would want to develop an HCA template to have available, so that if we did have applicants come to us, that they would have a form to submit officially to the town.
Okay.
But Mike, can you talk to town council about that? About if we look for an overlay, should we also look to do something on the HCA?
you can do something on the HCA. It doesn't require town meeting approval. That's a selectman,
Okay,
you can have a template ready, and if someone comes forward, then you would sit down with them and negotiate a agreement.
okay. And is that something we'd want town council to review as well?
Yeah.
So how do we get started on that piece?
Say
How do
that.
we get started on developing that template?
We would just, I know I brought information before that Copman and Page had developed, a template, and so it would just be taking that template and having it ready to go when someone comes in.
Okay. Would you mind, could you send that to me, and then I'd like to share that with the IDC?
Yep.
And then, if it's okay, I'll take it back to the chair of the IDC and see if it's something that perhaps we want to assume, and we'll look at it and then come back to the board.
I'm trying to remember, I was working on it before. Did I bring the template before? Yeah, I had changed everything and brought it. Yep, okay. I'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing that I had, and this is, and I see some folks in the audience who may have opinions on this. One of the things that I've been seeing, particularly in social media, and then just in talking to people, I've had a couple calls from residents about obviously the water, right? Like that's really probably our biggest downfall in the town, definitely our biggest downfall in the town. One of the biggest challenges that we have, and so the question's been there a lot about, should we entertain and I know it's happened in the past, right, but having the town, the Water Sewer Commission appointed positions to bring more oversight and accountability to those. So I don't know if that's something that we can discuss to put on.
That's a charter also, because that was on the previous charter that was brought before the town. The last time changes were made and voted in 2011, and that one was rejected, but it was on there.
Wasn't there a more recent vote on that? Because I think I recall like 2014, 2015.
Well, the charter's reviewed in years
Ending
ending at zero, so it was reviewed in 2010, and then it was brought to town.
It dragged
meeting.
out, and
Okay.
it took a while.
I don't know whether it was 11 or 12 that it was brought to town meeting,
I think it was more recent than that, because I
Yeah.
remember.
because they voted a lot of the changes, but that one was rejected.
It seemed to me, I thought that, I could be wrong. I thought that we had tried independently.
It was a
To-
standalone.
Yeah.
It's twice, it's been defeated twice. Once was the result of the charter review, and then once was the selectmen's efforts at a town meeting.
Yeah.
And it was shut down.
That might be the one that Jack's talking about. That would have been more recent.
And that was the more recent
Well, I
one.
mean,
That was like 3 years.
while you're talking town council, why don't we, he'll check with town council to see if the board of selectmen could put that on a town meeting warrant as a standalone question. Although it seemed to me, I could be wrong, I thought that went to a ballot, but I could be wrong.
I remember from a town meeting. I don't recall a ballot question
Yeah.
on that. Maybe it's a
So-
two-parter and it just failed
Yeah,
at
I
first.
don't know.
When we did it for the town clerk, it was a town meeting and a ballot.
So maybe,
Remember when the first time it failed?
yeah,
A
so
long time ago, so I think it is a town meeting vote and a ballot vote.
yeah.
And I think it won at town meeting, but lost at the ballot. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll-
Anyways, if you can check that out while you're talking with
Yep.
town council, and that way we'll know for sure
Okay,
if we have firm footing to go forward on our own.
sure. And then what's the overall process? So, Mike, you take these away, and then we plan to, by the initial deadline, put placeholders
Right.
Right,
onto the warrant?
yep.
And then after the fact, we'll fine tune the wording so it's legally correct.
Okay. And all those come back to us anyway, right? Everything
Yes.
that's submitted?
Yep.
And we have until August 27th, 3:30 to get the articles in, right? So,
A piece of cake.
2.5 weeks, plenty of time, right?
Okay, I don't know if there was anything else. This was more of, I had an ongoing list and then just questions on how the process worked overall.
Nothing on my end.
Yeah. For the most part, it's, departments have brought forth warrants, other committees. I mean, it's a hodgepodge. It's not like we are in charge of the whole thing. We just call for the meeting and wait
Right.
for things to fall into place. But, I mean, we can definitely investigate the questions you had,
Okay,
okay?
perfect, yeah.
Okay. Next is discussion and/or vote on the August 26, 2019 special town meeting articles, tax increment financing with Bremer Bio prior year and a prior year tax bill, or prior year bill.
Okay. We have two representatives here tonight, Brian Cohen. And I'll put up.
Sharon Stanley, yeah.
I think, do you have a, in your packet, you should have the spreadsheet, which shows TIF. I want to put it up on the screen. So the first year is 50%, as we did with Alnylam, and that will enable us to receive new growth. And then the preceding years, 90 and
85.
85, 80.
85, I think, for
I see 85 for
third
3
year,
years.
yep.
85s.
75,
Two 70s,
yep,
a 60, a 50, a 40, and two 30s.
correct. And we're happy to answer any questions. I think you've heard a bit at the last meeting from representatives from Bremer. But any questions you might have, we're happy to answer. And we have a session with the Finance Committee on Monday.
Any questions?
So I guess I'm wondering, why is this a 13-year proposal?
So it's consistent with the history that was done with Alnylam in terms of the TIF. We had started at a shorter duration. We had requested a lengthening of the duration for a decrease of the percentage. That was a trade-off that we made in some of the back and forth with the town. Longer is obviously, helps the company defray some of its operating costs for a longer period of time. Lower percentages, which the town got as a trade-off, enables it to get more of the incremental tax revenue over the term, so.
I mean, I guess I asked about the 13 years because we're, like, for 4 years, we're at a pretty high percent, like 90% abatement, 85, 85, 85. Right, that's
We try to say
a pretty
relative.
steep percentage.
And those tend to be these I've done with Shire and Lexington. We've actually worked here in town, working on one now in Worcester, done one in Lowell. They tend to be higher in the earlier years as the companies are ramping up their operations. And it's also net new incremental tax base for the town. So it's not, it's none of the existing tax base is missing. And so it allows the company to ramp into the cost structure of this and get its feet under it in operations. And it allows the town to slowly get to 100% of the incremental value without losing anything that it's getting today. That's sort of tends to be why they're the stair-step structure going from the high to low.
I mean, I get the high to low. I guess I'm wondering why for 3 consecutive years we're at 85% and there's no decrease in the percentage.
And we tend to look at the numbers on the bottom and sort of look at the incremental revenue to the town as if we were to increase, if we were to decrease the 85% and hold 75% for longer, it's ultimately the numbers on the bottom is where things all shake out. So it can be structured in a number of different ways, but this is one that was based on the historic deals that the town have done, and also in line with how these are done in other municipalities.
That when you have the 2-year ramp-up period, that then you hold, after that 2-year ramp-up, then you hold at 85% for the next 3 years? That's consistent with?
Yes, some are higher than that, and some are lower than that. It's really all case by case, but it's not uncommon to see the ramp-up period because the building's partially assessed as it's under construction, and that's kind of the point of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, the higher numbers in the earlier years tend to be so the operation could get its feet under itself, and then that tails off to be just a normal building on the tax rolls over time.
So can you refresh my memory from the presentation last time? You guys were expecting to open mid-2021?
Sharon?
So that's, on here, it would be year 2?
Those would be our first full manufacturing runs. We would be doing commissioning probably, our hope is in Q3 2021.
Okay.
And the typical TIF, and I think that's under consideration here, would commence upon certificate of occupancy of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So if you begin renovations, if you begin.
Next year is the plan to begin.
Yeah.
Design will go into Q4.
Of this year. Next year, begin renovations. And certificate of occupancy is a little bit of a moving target because it's when life safety and other elements of and I don't know that we're that far along.
Yes, what we can get are sort of a partial C of O so that we can begin to put some people in there that don't remain there overnight or even from day to day, but they can go in and drop down, work in the manufacturing suites, come out, do the reports for the commissioning, and then they exit the building. But at least we have a partial C of O so they can be in there and operating. And then the full C of O is when we are ready to just go. And so we've done that, and we hope to do that in Lexington at the smaller facility that we hope to have running by the end of this year.
Okay. Can I ask you too, could you go up to that microphone just so other people can hear the questions, or the answers, I'm sorry.
And yeah, historically, the language in this town and in many of these agreements is the commencement would be in the year immediately following certificate of occupancy. And that would be the fiscal year, so lining up the tax year.
Okay.
And just, all the TIFs are based on what we feel is beneficial to us, and obviously what the companies feel they need in order to justify locating here. And in the past, I think Horizon was actually 4 years of 100%. We've gotten away from any 100% increments. And I think Alnylam was 95% for 2 or 3 years.
I think that's
Yeah.
right.
So we've tried to reduce some of the percentages.
And just as a reminder, some context, it's the proposed investment is on the order of $150 million. The current assessed value of the property is closer to $9 million. So not every dollar of the $150 million, some of it's personal property that doesn't go on the tax rolls, but we're looking at a tax base increase of multiples of what the current building is. And so, it's a significant tax increase to the town over what's there today. I actually ran the numbers out, taking the $9 million current assessment times a 2%, hypothetical annual escalation, which is what's been contemplated in the model that we've been looking at. And that $6.8 million in tax that the town gains with the investment and with the TIF would be closer to $2 million if the building continued on as sort of a not this higher and better use. And so that incremental 4.8. Now, that's obviously a function of where that assessed value goes, which the assessor has to, work by her guidelines each year based on the actual investment that was made. But it's a significant upgrade to the tax base, even with the discount in the early years that tails off.
So Mike, go ahead, Jack.
No, I was gonna ask, when you're going into the building, I know you have to qualify the systems and everything like that because it's the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it'll be a
And-
huge, major renovation, yeah.
Right, but, and to be able to start producing pharmaceuticals or anything like the qualification process, does that start prior to having a certificate of occupancy, or is that after the certificate of occupancy?
Some of it's before, some of it's after, depending on how many suites we have operational at the time. Right now, we have clients signed on for several, not necessarily all, that would be in that building. We're evaluating whether we would build infrastructure to support new suites or whether we would just totally build out all of the suites. What very often happens, like happened in Lexington, is we started to build out and then more clients signed on, and now we have an overage of clients, and that was what initiated, we really need to go out and look for something bigger. So it really depends on how the clients come in, what their demands are, what their FDA approvals are rolling in on, and what they expect, and when they need to get to market. Very often they come to us at least 18 months before they know they're going to, and feel confident they will get FDA approval to start talking because of the amount of time it takes to build it out and to know what size suites they need and how many and that type of thing. So for right now, I can't 100% answer your question because it is kind of a moving target, which does make it difficult to budget.
Right. No, I'm just trying to, as a point for giving more of a tax break at the beginning, is even though the building is there, it might not be producing because the systems and the equipment, everything has to be qualified, and
Yeah.
I know that can be a lengthy process.
I mean, as of this afternoon, in a quick meeting I was in, there is even more interest to the point where instead of waiting on, talking to you for another 2 years on expanding the building, it may be that as we roll into design, it would be sooner rather than later. So it may be the 209,000 will be ready to go by 2021. And based on what I've seen in the year and a half I've been there, it wouldn't surprise me.
One of the other things about this project, as I think about it with the town, it's biomanufacturing. They manufacture drugs for other clients, customers that are in trials or coming to market. And I feel like we're at the very leading edge of a lot of these companies that have been developing drugs and going into clinical trials in the greater Boston area in eastern Massachusetts. And we're just now seeing the manufacturing start for these products as they get to that stage in their life cycle. So I think we're at the very leading edge of a lot of these companies having products that need to be produced. And I think for Massachusetts, it's a really big opportunity. I know the state and the Life Science Center are focused on it. So to the extent you have Alnylam growing here and get another and sort of become known as a cluster, these companies tend to group together. So I think it's sort of from a strategic standpoint beneficial for the town to sort of grow this presence of these types of operations.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, with Thermo Fisher now as being part of, or we are part of their company, they would not let an asset like this sit idle without something happening in the building. So I imagine if for some reason there was some available space, it would be utilized for some division, whether it's another viral vector company or something else, and we would cordon off the areas as best we could.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I have general questions. I don't know if it's related to the TIF. So as part of this, you guys are going to be doing construction, like, and Brett, I think this might be a question for you and Mike. Do we also consider in here the use of local unions or local contractors to do that part of the work?
We're not allowed to do that as part of a TIF. We can encourage it, and we can encourage them to hire local residents, all else being equal, but by law, we're not allowed to tell them they have to hire local residents.
Okay.
Boston just tried that.
I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Didn't end well.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was something that was considered, right?
Yeah.
Because you enter into a financial agreement and really it's a contract, right? And you think about, well, if there's a part of the contract where, you're getting an abatement of taxes, then what else is coming to the community, right? Like, do you hire 10% of local folks or not?
I can't make any promises, but the reason we focused on this area and this building is when we look at the staff that we have now and the staff that we may have lost because of the commutes that they had into Cambridge.
Right.
And we took those demographics and actually did like a hot map. The overlapping circles of the Cambridge population as well as the population that we had lost overlapped and hit this spot. So that is the main reason we have a lot of really good talent down here that have gone to Alnylam, that have gone to Moderna.
Gotcha.
And so that is why we positioned ourselves here, so your workforce is, and this area workforce is one of the reasons why we focused here.
And historically, when you guys do construction, do you use local unions, or are you farming it out? Like what I'm wondering is the state getting income tax, or are they doing 1099s and the state's not getting anything from?
Well, I know Alnylam, it was all local unions.
Is that typically how Thermo Fisher does it too?
You know what, Thermo Fisher I can't speak to due to the fact that it was recent. I don't know who the subs are. We've used Skanska, we've used DC Bean, which is a very local contractor. But I don't know who the subs are exactly. There may be some, let's call it importing, because business is booming in Cambridge and it's very hard to find good quality subs. So we probably can't make any promises, nor could Skanska or Turner or whoever it would be, just because that is a huge factor right now. And we are on deadlines based on client contracts, so I don't think we could probably make any guarantees at this point, but I can have, if you want to talk to someone from our engineering team, they might be able to address our historical data.
Well, I mean, we're not legally able to ask for it. I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
We can just encourage
Yeah.
them.
I mean, the hope is that we support the community with
Right.
with employment, whether it be during the construction phase or operational phase.
Right. I think a lot of that happens naturally just by the most efficient path would be that the subs are more local. And I know, because we're in a project now in Worcester, that the subs much prefer to be in the outlying areas rather than fight the traffic into Boston. So I think subs tend to come from as locally as they can, be sourced competitively and have the qualifications. But I don't know that there's any commitments that
Sure.
we can make to that.
And
Okay.
because of some of the specialized work and suites and things like that. It could be that some of the subs are coming from other areas, but then we have general areas, the administrative space, the warehouse space, that kind of thing. It is not high specialty, so there may be even that breakdown within the project itself.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Just a clarification, if we're voting on this, is it just a simple majority, or do we need everybody? Okay, I may need to recuse myself. My company operates in this space as well. I think we may have an agreement with you. I wasn't able to get clarification from my legal team before,
Yeah.
so to avoid any potential appearances of conflict of interest, I'm going to have to recuse.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, Brad, just process-wise, we are voting that this will be the warrant for the 26th meeting, that the town will then come to vote on?
And that we'll support it. We're supporting it.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So if there are no other questions, Chair will entertain a motion to support the TIF as outlined in the agreement for the 13 years.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very
We
much.
appreciate it.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
And good luck.
See you Monday.
We'll see you in a couple
See you
weeks.
then. Yeah. Would you like us to
Couple
stay?
weeks,
or-
right?
26th. Yep.
Yeah, finance, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Just the only other
Making sure to
article
make it
right
come up.
now on that warrant is a prior year bill. And that's it on the warrant.
Okay. Let's see. Now that Jennifer walked down here, let's skip her. Discussion on wetlands permitting process with the conservation agent.
Yes, thanks. I'm sorry, it's really hard for me to hear
I'm sorry.
tonight, so you just have to be a little louder.
Oh.
When you're-
You've been swimming in Get Swimmers the Era.
No, I can't hear very well out of one ear, so
Well, turn around.
it's been that. I have to do this a lot. Okay, so wetland permitting process. And I just have two handouts for you, just so you can follow along.
Thanks.
Oh, I gave, wait. I need one of those back, please.
Send it back.
You would have thought I would have learned this in elementary school, wouldn't you?
Okay, so just for a basic understanding of what wetland permitting is and what the process is, we'll just mention right off the bat that wetland permitting is a regulatory process. It's not political, it's not about liking projects, it's not about needing projects. It's whether or not the project meets requirements under Wetland Protection Act. And so that is the Conservation Commission's job, to protect the environment through the pre-construction project review and ensuring compliance with the regulations. So that's a legislative mandate. There are 8 reasons why wetlands are important, and we have this available during the public hearings. And so under Mass General Laws, the Wetland Protection Act, the reasons or why wetlands are important, known as the interests of the Act, are protection of public and private groundwater supplies, protection of private water supplies, flood control, storm damage prevention, prevention of pollution, protection of land containing shellfish, protection of fisheries, and protection of wildlife habitat. Those are all the functions that all the different types of wetlands provide free to the community. And sometimes they're referred to as ecosystem services.
Do we have all of those here in Norton?
Land containing shellfish sometimes is referred to more as coastal shellfish, but we do have, I think, 12 freshwater mussels in Massachusetts, and 6 of them are on the endangered species list, and I think we have 5 of those. And then probably 3 or 4 common native freshwater shellfish species. They are filter feeders, so they help clean water. Okay, so those are known as the interests of the act, and those are the issues that the Conservation Commission looks at when they're reviewing a project. They're trying to figure out how does a certain project impact each wetland resource area's ability to provide these items. Okay, so there's multiple different types of wetland areas, and those are called wetland resource areas, and they include the bank of a stream or a water body, bordering vegetated wetland, which most people just know as a freshwater wetland, land under the water bodies and waterways. We don't actually regulate, under the state law, a water body, like the reservoir or Winnicunnet Pond. We have jurisdiction over the bank and the land under it, but not the water itself. Sounds a little cuckoo, but that's the way Wetland Protection Act was written. Bordering land subject to flooding and isolated land subject to flooding are two more resource areas. It's all about flooding. So it can be an area that is adjacent to a stream or a river, or it can be an area that's adjacent to a pond or a lake. Those are the bordering land subject to flooding areas. That's the 100-year floodplain or the 1% chance flooding event. The other one is isolated land subject to flooding, which could just be a low spot on somebody's property, in a field, in a forest, that is not connected to a stream or a water body, but it may hold a certain amount of water, and all of that is determined by hydrologic calculations. There's a whole series of steps you go through to figure out if it has that amount of water. That resource area does not have a 100-foot buffer zone, but wetland and bank do. The last wetland resource area is riverfront area, and that's 200 feet from the mean annual high water mark or the bank of any perennial stream or river. And 200 feet is not a buffer, that is a resource area. It's like working in a wetland itself. So that's actually an extremely complicated section of the wetland regs, and it takes a lot of review to get to that point. So each of those resource areas has its own section within Wetland Protection Act. And so I gave you an example of bank. All right, so you have a copy of bank. Each one has a preamble, so it describes what that resource area is. So we'll stick with bank, just because you have it in front of you. So the preamble will explain what is the bank, why is it important, why do we care about it, why is it protected. Then there's a definition that explains how you figure out where the bank is. I might look at something and say the bank is over here, someone else might look at it and say it's in a different spot. There's a very specific definition for how we figure that out. The next item is a presumption. So under Wetland Protection Act, each resource area is presumed to protect one of these interests on the board here. So not all of them, like wetlands would do pretty much all of them. Riverfront would do almost all of them. But bordering land subject to flooding, or that 100-year floodplain, would focus more on flood control and storm damage prevention and maybe even pollution control. So it wouldn't carry all of them. So each one has a presumption that says which one is applicable. And then the last part is each of those resource areas has a performance standard. So there are certain things that an applicant has to meet in order for the commission to approve it. And they're pretty specific. So if you look at bank performance standards, the first one is physical stability of the bank. So whatever project you propose, you can't create a problem where the bank is no longer stable, right? Because that would cause flooding on somebody else's property, that would cause erosion on somebody's property, which would then take all of that sediment from the bank and dump it somewhere else. That would be sedimentation within the wetland, and then that's filling floodplain, so it's also pushing floodwater onto somebody else's property. So that's just one example. So the commission would look at a project and make sure that the physical stability of the bank is not going to be impacted. Now, when the commission is reviewing that, they're making sure that they've been given all of the information they need. So there's something called a burden of proof, and the applicant has the burden of proof. They're responsible for proving that their project will meet all of those standards and that there will not be a negative impact to wetlands, or none of these items would be reduced. It's not the commission's job to say, nah, that looks like it's going to be a problem. We don't have to prove it'll be a problem. It's the applicant who has to prove to the commission. And they do that through all of their documentation, quantification of resource area impacts, if they're going to replicate an area, if they're providing stormwater management. All of that has to be quantified, not just on the wetland forms, but in their permit application. And without that documentation, the commission's decision could be considered arbitrary and capricious. And so an arbitrary decision would not be upheld legally. So by following each of those standards, the way they're written, and making sure everyone provides the documentation they're required to provide, it ensures that everybody's getting a fair shake, right? Everybody's held to the same standard, no matter who they are or where they are, or what type of project they're doing. The commission is looking at those performance standards. And it's not enough to just state, we're not going to impact the stability of the bank. They have to document that with proof and provide evidence for that.
Can I ask a crazy question?
Yeah.
How does a homeowner do that, right? Like, if I came to you with the project,
Yeah.
and I have this burden of proof, like, where do I even start to do that? Or how?
If it's a small enough project, then we have many different types of wetland permits, right? It's not just one wetland permit. So for some smaller projects, we have a permit that's called determination of applicability. And, everybody needs to have a surveyed plan or an engineered plan. If it's something small enough, they come in and I help them fill out the permit application, and we go through the process together so they know what they're supposed to be doing. Those type of projects are usually in the buffer zone. They're the outer 50 feet of the wetland buffer zone. So there's much less likely to be an impact because they're so far away and it's a smaller project. If it's closer than 50 feet to the wetland, or in the wetland itself, or in the resource area, or in the stream, then they're required to have an engineer or a surveyor prepare their permit application, because it's much more involved. It goes from 5 pages to maybe 28. DEP forms get longer and longer. I'm actually on a committee trying to reduce the size of those permits with DEP now. It's taking a while, but we're try to reduce the paper. And sometimes if they're in a wetland area and they have to replicate, or they're in a floodplain, they do need to hire a wetland consultant to help them with that. So it's not always obvious, but if it's a small enough project, people come in and I help them fill out their applications all the time. We started one today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And the permit process itself, did you want to go through that as well? Okay. So applicants will submit their wetland permit application, and this, there's a lot of information on our webpage about applying for permits and what checklists are required for people to follow. There's also a pamphlet about, so I applied for a wetland permit, now what do I do? Or what does that mean? So there's a 3 or 4 page document that walks people through the same process. So people will submit a permit application. We have to put that in the newspaper, so it has to be in the Sun Chronicle at least 5 days before the public hearing is advertised. And if it's the large project, then the applicant has to notify all of the abutters within 100 feet of their property line. If it's the smaller project, nobody's required to be notified, but as long as I've been here, the Conservation Commission has always done that as a courtesy. So we do send notification to abutters, even though it's not required for those smaller projects. The applicant will come to the public hearing and present their project. The commission would then ask, and I would then ask our questions of the applicant, and then we open it up to abutters who are sitting in the audience who may have questions. If people can't be there, they send their questions by a letter or an email, and they're brought up at the public hearing, so their comments are heard, even if they're not there. When we've finished all discussion about the project, then we close the public hearing, and the commission has 21 days to issue a permit. So at the end after closing the public hearing, the commission will deliberate and talk about whether they have enough information, whether they can approve the project with conditions, if there are specific conditions they want, or if they need to deny the project. And there's 2 reasons to deny a project. It can be because they did not meet those performance standards that we talked about. They didn't provide enough documentation, they didn't do enough proof, or they just didn't do enough work in order, if they're replicating, they didn't do enough replication, kind of thing. Or the commission can deny a project for lack of information. So if we've spent multiple meetings or had many letters, or our consultant has had multiple letters where we've asked for the same thing and we haven't received it, it's essential information for the commission to make that decision. If we still haven't received it, we can deny the project because we don't have all the information to make the right decision. After that, the applicant and residents, 10 citizens groups, or DEP can appeal that decision within 10 days of when it was issued. And then it goes through a whole process with DEP. But we'll just assume everything's been approved. And the larger projects, the permit has to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds with the property, so that if the property is sold, whoever buys it is notified that there are wetlands on the property and that there's some sort of project that was supposed to have happened. It gives us a chance to make sure everything was done correctly and close the title, clear the title for the property. Once it's been recorded, all projects are required to do a pre-construction meeting with me, and we go over the permit conditions, everything we say you can and can't do in order to get your project to go forward. Contractors, subcontractors, if it's a lot of site work, they're all required to be there. Everybody hears the same thing at the same time. It actually solves a whole lot of questions later on and keeps everybody on the same page. So we've been doing that for at least 15 years, and it's really helped quite a bit with people having questions, last-minute questions when they finally go out there and start the work. As the commission's staff person, I do all of the monitoring, all of the site inspections, all of the permit compliance. If there are any issues, then we bring it up at that time. If there's issues with sediment control and it's about to rain, then they need to stop their work and take care of the sediment control, so they're sort of a preemptive strike on a wetland violation. But if it's not going to rain, then people have time to take care of what they need to take care of. When all of the work is finished, it is the applicant's responsibility to come back to the commission with their certificate of compliance request and their as-built plans to prove what they did is what was approved, and that there were no changes to the plan. Under Mass Wetland Protection Act, we either approve that or deny it. We've always had a policy where there's a partial certificate of compliance, where if, especially in winter, if someone, did a garage, but it's winter and they can't stabilize the site, they can't get grass to grow, we can issue a partial certificate of compliance to let them occupy a building, but we hold back a little bit of money. And then in the spring, when they go and seed the area and everything's stabilized, all the money goes back to them. So it's just sort of holding collateral to make sure it actually does get finished. That's been a long-standing policy of the commission. It's also been a long-standing standard operating procedure with the building department to make sure that before occupancy permits are issued, that people do have at least a partial certificate of compliance, and that saves people a lot of heartache later on when they're trying to either refinance their property or sell a house. Just get all of that done up front. So that seems to help quite a bit. And then when they do get their certificate of compliance, that's also recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and that clears the title for that project. So even years ago, people would say, well, I got a permit So I'm all set, and, I'd have to remind people, well, you got a permit for a deck, you want to do a garage, now you need a separate permit for that. So one permit doesn't cover everything. Just to note that the Conservation Commission is your 7-member board of volunteers who administer and enforce the act. They are the ones who actually take the votes. Staff, I do not vote on projects. I just give recommendations and do represent the commission for site inspections and prepare their drafts, and then they have the final say on that. The only other thing I would add is you really do have a fantastic Conservation Commission. They are very diligent in reading all of the material they're required to read. They go to ongoing training. They make sure that they're up on all of the changes. They are intelligent and very reasonable people. For the last 20 years that I've been here, Conservation Commission has issued 2,021 permits. And I know there was a question about denials. Only 20 have been denied, so 1% of all permits in the last 20 years have actually been denied. We work very hard, the commission works very hard during all of those public hearings to make sure we get all the information so that they can make a decision that would be upheld. Okay, so that's permitting process 101. Kind of went through relatively quickly, but certainly if you have any other questions,
Just when you close a public hearing, does the commission then vote on the project after you close the public hearing? How do you do that?
The deliberations sometimes happen after we close the public hearing, and other times they happen the following meeting when they have a draft order of conditions. Most of the time, like I said, 99% of them are approved, and you can kind of tell by the discussion whether the project would be approved or not, and so that's how I write the draft. If it seems like people are on the fence, then there would be a robust discussion, and that is held during the public hearing. All the Conservation Commission meetings are open to the public. We meet right upstairs. There's not a lot of room up there, and it's difficult to hear, especially if there's another meeting here. I know you have the same issue, not being able to hear in the building. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Did you have to ask? So I have a couple questions. So you made a comment about that you don't regulate the water body?
Correct.
Right, under the state?
The water.
Water, sorry. I probably just was reading this part. So I have two questions. Actually, it's odd, and just for transparency, like this was something that I had asked you to come a while ago just because I didn't know anything about the wetlands permitting process and wanted to understand more and thought it would be beneficial for others to hear. And then ironically enough, I got an email this week from somebody who had asked about whether or not we've considered having our own set of wetlands protection standards, like for the town.
Oh, you mean a wetland bylaw?
Yes, yeah, because she noted that, like, the state is, and I'm just going to, like, read from the email, but that, the state is really, they provide the bare minimum of protection for the wetland resources. And in the face of climate change and need to ensure resiliency for health and safety, that it would benefit the town's adopted local bylaw. And so when you made the comment about, not actually looking at the water, like, has that ever been considered? Is that something
Yes.
that we would consider?
Yeah, in 2009, we first tried to pass a wetland bylaw. I think that was a fall town meeting. Town meeting members requested that we draft rules and regulations before they voted on on an actual wetland bylaw. And so we spent the winter doing that and proposed it again in the spring of 2010. I'll say there's a bit of misinformation that went around that time, and that would be very polite. And so it was defeated. But whoever wrote that, the state regulations are the bare minimum. more than two-thirds or three-quarters of all cities and towns in Massachusetts have a wetland bylaw. Certainly, everyone within the Canoe River Aquifer has a wetland bylaw. I'd have to think about if Sharon has one or not, but Mansfield, Foxborough, and Easton all have wetland bylaws. Taunton has a bylaw.
So
It would certainly be beneficial.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that something we should consider?
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. How would we go about that? I mean, I don't know why I feel this, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like we're always behind the eight ball, right? Like things are happening everywhere else to just be in a better position, and it's not happening here. Like, is that something that we could do for the October meeting? I mean, maybe let me ask you first. Is that something, the documentation that's there? I see the fear in your eyes. The documentation that's there, is it still applicable today, or does it
It's
need?
yeah, it's not fear. It's it was a significant amount of work to compile all of that information, to review other town bylaws and city bylaws, and to try to put that in a non-legalese so people could understand it.
Right.
I would have to ask the commission if that's something that they're willing to undertake.
imagine right
Fall
now.
town meeting is very soon.
Personally, I would think maybe Fall Town Meeting 2020 would be more realistic. Only having served on, different committees, dealing with bylaws and things
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, the rules and regulations that we drafted almost 10 years ago, I refer back to them now and then, and I think it's written in common enough language that it would be understood. But the bylaw itself would need some work, and I don't know that we could pull that together in time. It's 3 weeks away for the deadline.
And you'd have to have public information
Right.
meetings.
We
and
would need,
it'd
we would
take a
need to
lot
do
of-
that. Spring or
Spring?
fall, if that's something people are interested in and would support, then it would certainly,
Here for you, so.
it would certainly help us quite a bit in protecting natural resources. And most specifically in preventing flooding. I mean, that's really the main concern for most of these resource areas and for projects in town is nobody wants somebody downstream to be flooded because of somebody else's project. But definitely something that could be looked into. I can ask the commission at their meeting on Monday.
If you wouldn't mind, I think that'd be
Sure.
great. And then certainly any way that we can support it, or,
Okay.
like I said, I can bring in at least one volunteer
Great.
who's in the business, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I would be happy to speak with that person.
Anything else?
So of the 20 or so permits that have been denied, have any been overturned? Has the DEP come back, or have they been appealed? And
Yes. They have approved, it's kind of funny because sometimes we approve projects and the applicant appeals them anyway.
How does that happen?
appeal the conditions that are imposed, or why would they appeal?
I'm being very delicate
Okay.
in that, correct, sometimes people do not want to follow conditions or any condition at all, and Southeast Region tends to approve projects with significantly fewer conditions than we would put on them.
Would a bylaw help with that?
Well, we would have two things there. Most, from what I hear, a lot of projects don't happen in Easton because they have a bylaw, and so they come to just over the Norton town line. If someone wanted to appeal a project, and we had a bylaw, then there would be an appeal under Wetland Protection Act as well as an appeal under the bylaw. So they don't they're two separate things. They don't get mashed together as one appeal. They would have to be appealed separately.
Have you seen in your experience of bylaws in other towns, like, do sometimes people just go overboard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes the bylaws they're too much. They're not realistic for the property or for the town. For instance, a lot of other bylaws have like a 50-foot no build. It's just not practical in Norton, where people already have homes, they already have lawns within 50 feet. Our commission's policy is a minimum of 25 feet, no disturb. So any bylaw that was proposed in the past or would be proposed, I imagine would keep in the same, we would keep the similar policies to what we have. Now, there's a brand-new buffer zone guidance document that Mass Association of Conservation Commissions has just recently published, and I was on the committee for that, just full disclosure. So helped develop that document. But there are things in there that are science-based, where the commission doesn't have their copies yet, but they would be able to look at that and say, well, what does the science say about protecting a floodplain, or how much space do you really need to prevent pollution? And some of that is dependent on the slope and the vegetation type, and wetlands isn't as cut and dry as people may imagine. There's a lot that goes into how does the buffer zone actually protect the wetland, and protecting the wetland protects your drinking water. So.
I have one final question, if nobody else has any more.
Go for it.
How much of Norton is considered wetlands?
40% of the land area is wetland.
Does that make it incredibly difficult for us to bring in businesses?
I wouldn't say that. The Wetland Protection Act, the buffer zone, and the resource area of the riverfront area are jurisdictional areas. It doesn't say you can't build within 100 feet. It says you're required to get permits, and the permits have to meet the performance standards. Yeah, so we just happen to have the lion's share of wetland resource areas, rivers, streams, ponds, floodplains, wetlands, just from the glacier. So
I think the problem is that most of the 60% that's not wetlands is already developed.
correct.
So that's the factor that's maybe is making it difficult to bring in things into Norton. The fact that the land that's left is wet.
It is. There's a lot of marginal land that's left over that people are trying to develop. And conservation is not anti-development. Conservation is a balanced development. So cluster zoning that we've had in the past, it allows the higher density, but it also includes conservation land around it. You kind of get the best of both worlds. It's a reduced, road construction and costs and things for the developer, but we still get open space protection, and you still get the density that you were looking for. So there are certainly ways to develop responsibly. Yeah.
Is there anything that we can be doing better to support you and the commission?
I think you've always supported conservation, and we certainly appreciate that. I know I do. It's not a popular job. It's not always, what's that?
What about the staff?
The staff, oh, yes.
Oh, right.
Oh, thank you, yes.
That's our introduction.
Man, sorry. Yes, supporting with staff would be fantastic. I think it was probably 10 years ago that our budget was cut and the secretary went down to part-time, and with many other departments, including the library. I think we might be the last department to be restored to funding. A full-time conservation secretary really is essential in that office. Not only do I have more than 40% of the land area of the town is wetland and all the wetland permitting that entails, but I do a lot of open space projects and grant writing, as I'm sure you're aware of. And having an assistant, full-time conservation person, secretary, really does free up a lot of my time to be able to do less of the administrative items and more of the actual conservation and wetland protection work. So yes, that's one way. Thank you. Thanks.
So can I ask, because of the shortage of staff, like do the projects, are we holding up the projects because we don't have enough resources to help you to turn them around? Like to
Some
go out and
things
do
may
some
take longer.
projects and- okay.
Some things may take longer. I've not been able to write a number of grants this year that I really would have liked to have done because I'm doing wetland, too much of the, not too much of the wetland thing, that's the primary purpose of the job, but.
It's the majority of your time.
A lot of things could be, more time could be freed up for other items, like a lot of the grant writing. Yeah, and I think I'm up to 1.3 million in grants. So I'd like to keep doing that. I can't do any conservation projects without a grant.
Right.
Yeah. The community rating system program is the floodplain program through FEMA, where people get a 5% discount on their flood insurance because we're in this program, but that also takes up a lot of my time and could be easily handled by administrative help.
How do we make that happen?
Find more tax money.
Well, I think we did.
Well, we're proposing to request that amount again at the fall town meeting. We requested in the spring town meeting, and it was not recommended, so we would make that request again in the fall.
And that's just to change your part-time to full-time? It's
Part-time
not
to
even
full-time.
Full head, right? It's not like an additional head, it's just.
No, it's just going from part-time to full-time, restoring the staffing before the last recession, and I think it was 2008 or so. Yeah.
Did you say there's something on, in the October meeting now for that? Did you say that?
It will be. I think we have another week or two before warrants are due, so that was always the plan. Okay, we didn't do it in the spring, so we'll try again in the fall. We don't usually ask for much, so it's nice to be able to ask at the fall town meeting. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, discussion of employee recognition. You know, Ms. Deli had mentioned recognizing
I have, like,
length of
yep,
employment.
length of service, like if we had any sort of a program, or if we could develop an employee recognition program
Yeah,
based on length of service.
I think Mr. Eunice was going to put together at some time a list of
Okay,
employees and their length of service, so we could at least start from there.
okay. Do you have that, Mike, now, or not yet?
No.
Okay, so maybe a placeholder in a month or so that we look at it. I know, I think you had mentioned like doing something from 20 years up. Maybe if we look to see kind of average as well,
10, 15, 20.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to the appointments in the fire department, we have a lot of long-term employees.
Right, right.
Who have been here for beyond 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be nice to recognize them besides when they're retiring. That's usually
Right, yeah.
when we mention it.
Exactly. I mean, if somebody, if they're committed to working here and doing a great job, and, a thank you goes a long way.
Yep.
We may not pay the highest or the best, but that doesn't mean that we can't do some
Yep.
other sort of recognition for length of employment.
Right.
Okay. So then
And-
we'll plan in a month then to take a look at that overall, and then discuss kind of how we want to shape a recognition program?
Okay.
Okay.
And discussion on town priorities. Ms. Deli, you also,
Yep, that was mine also. So this is something, I mean, it goes back to when we were campaigning, and talking about really priorities. And, I mentioned earlier, like, one of the challenges in town is the water, right? And it's known outside of the town. So I think it's our responsibility to look across to say, what are the priorities in the town? Like, what are the things that people have requested? What are the things that, from a perspective of requirements versus, nice to haves, versus what are things that we can do to improve the community overall? Like big projects and small. So something like the Village Center to the water treatment plant, or, assume worst case scenario, water treatment plant goes online and we still have 50% of the problem, right? Like making sure that that's a priority for the town to address and come up with a solution, and looking holistically at, and I think this goes back, we had some conversations with FinCom, with the chair of FinCom, about how do we develop a plan, a long-term plan of what we want to do, as well as how are we going to fund it, right? And so I think that we have a responsibility in the town, and, from getting information from residents or information, that we see, water's everywhere. Like, you never have a post on something without somebody else, that's on Facebook posting, without somebody else putting a message on there that ultimately comes back to the water. So I'd like for us to, maybe the next meeting, like, for us to walk away and think about what are some of those things that, Mary, you've been doing this a long time, like some of those issues that we've had that have kind of been festering out there, as well as what are some of the things that we've seen that, I don't even know where the Village Center at this point after the report, like, where does it go from there? Like, how do we do this?
Well, everything you're talking about sounds exactly like the meeting we had today with Serped, because they've been hired to work with us to develop our master plan.
Yeah.
And everything you talked about was things that were talked about. So they'll be developing a plan on how to develop the master plan. They'll be speaking with focus groups,
Is
residents,
that focused, like,
employees.
economic-based? Is that focused on what we bring in, or is it focused on everything in the community?
Everything.
Like, what we want to be in 10 years?
It's focused on everything, like, the fire department may need a new building here, or you need a new town hall and a senior center. You will look at housing in town, infrastructure.
Yeah.
All of that, everything that, you're talking about is whatever the people, when they have their focus group meetings with people in town, whatever the people decide should be the focus of the town moving forward, would all be part of the master plan. These are the things that people identified they want. This is how we're going to pay for them. This is what we need to increase the tax base so we can pay for them. They'll look at the changing demographics, the aging population, everything, and develop a master plan for the town.
So the master plan will have the what as well as the how? Great.
So does the master plan, and I know I asked to be part of that, to represent the board on that. Does that include representation from FinCom? So that there are recommendations on how we can do that, or things that we need to consider or look at?
I would have to look. I know that they mentioned different groups that they were looking for representatives from, so it may.
Okay. When should I expect to hear something on that, too?
I would think soon,
Okay.
because they'll be getting ready to have the kickoff meeting.
And then will we outline the selectmen's responsibility in that? So once there is a list, how do we make sure that that list is being executed, or how do we support that those priorities are being looked at or even shifted? Like what's ongoing? Is that part of it as well?
I would assume that once the master plan has been drafted and put, it'll be presented to
Yeah.
us, and then it'd be up to us to follow through on what we could. We'd have to make an assessment of, what we can do to implement it.
Right. I mean, I would assume that too, but I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah, that would be, if it happens in my tenure as chairman, that's how we'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, but until I see it, I can't really promise that, you
Yeah.
know.
No, that's fine. And
But that would be my plan as chairman. If they present it to us, then as a committee, we'll work on trying to implement as much as we can, and we might have to tweak it to fit priorities that we can afford at the time, but work towards the objectives that they set forth for
Yeah.
us.
No, and I can represent that on our behalf too, so that when it comes back, that we're better positioned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, but, yeah, I have no problem with taking their leadership on, putting everything together so we can have a plan to move forward.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're part of that, because we each get, we're the elected officials. I mean, when somebody comes to us with a problem, like, we should be able to represent that problem, or idea, or whatever it might be. So I don't want to be, like, as a group, I don't want to be engaged at the last minute when there may be items that, that sample population wasn't tapped on
Right.
for.
Well.
So, but I can keep that as
You'll be our
my.
representative, so if that
Yeah.
happens, it's your fault.
It's my fault, yeah. I'll assume that responsibility.
Okay. Anything else? If not, we'll move on to old business, and we're going to discuss the Leonard Street improvements with Conservation Commission Chairman, Conservation Agent, and Highway Superintendent. Somebody wake Keith up.
I'm Scott Allerhead, I'm Chairman of the Conservation Commission. And I guess to get started, first of all, discussion of Leonard Street improvements is currently an open hearing. We can't discuss specifics on an open hearing without violating open meeting law.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a meeting on Monday to discuss that specific hearing. We can talk in general terms right now.
Yeah.
If you have questions about that, but for the specifics that we're dealing with for that specific hearing, we can't get into it really.
So I guess, Mike, if that's the case, why were we talking about this the last meeting? If it's something that they haven't decided on?
Well, as the road commissioners, and, Keith was here also, our input for the hearing would be that we want you to look at the statement that you handed out tonight, that if the project includes replacement of an existing non-tidal crossing, the applicant demonstrates to the satisfaction of the issuing authority that the crossing complies with the Massachusetts stream crossing standards to the maximum extent possible. And we just want to emphasize that on Leonard Street, we're looking at 3 crossings, and we will work to change the culverts to meet the maximum extent feasible with the restrictions that we have with the water main and everything else, and just ask the commission to take that into consideration, that when we're not going to be able to meet the stream crossing standards, we can meet them to the maximum extent feasible, and improve on the situation, but we cannot meet the standards. And we hope the commission will take that into consideration.
But that's more for discussion Monday, right?
Exactly.
Okay. My question was just in general, Mike, on if it was still something that had not been decided yet? Right, I got the impression from what you had said last meeting, that it had already been decided and you couldn't comply with the requirements, but that's not the case?
Well, we've been told by the company that's going to do the work that the review engineer had told them that they had to meet the standards, and they're not able to do that.
We can discuss stream crossing standards in general terms, so you understand what they are and why they're important.
Sure.
Okay. So, and I have another.
Thanks.
And I guess just to clarify, when you're saying we can't meet the standards, you mean the applicant, right?
Well,
Because the town is not the applicant.
Well, they're doing the work as part of their project. The board has asked them to improve Leonard Street for us. So
Right, but they're required to do that.
they're doing
And
that.
They've submitted that
They're-
application.
The town is technically the owner of the road, and the selectmen, as the road commissioners, are technically the people that are in charge, and they're just doing the work for us.
Okay, but, so, just for conservation purposes, Condyne is the applicant? And you might be the town might be the owner?
Yeah.
Portion owner. Some of the work comes off the right-of-way. And so the property owner in those locations is the other property owner, but still not the applicant. I'm just making that distinction, and then saying, as Scott mentioned, it would be a violation of open meeting law for us to discuss the specifics of that. But these discussions have been happening for several months. We have a peer reviewer reviewing all of this information, and their comment letter should be available tomorrow on the most recent information review and the joint site inspection that we all conducted 2 weeks ago.
So can I ask you in general terms, when you're looking at something like this, you have two stakeholders, right? You have the town who owns the street, right? And then you have whoever owns the property that is adjacent to that street.
Yes.
Right? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean, that's typical?
Yes.
That the town, I guess.
It would just
hoping that we
explain
always
some
have
of
a
the personal distress people have been having over a project where a certain applicant has applied to the commission that we have not experienced before. But in general terms, stream crossing standards were established a number of years ago, first by the Army Corps of Engineers, and then they were adopted by Department of Environmental Protection. And so there was a strong need for stream connectivity and continuity for wildlife purposes. So if the stream was too small, or it was too high or too low, aquatic animals could not get from one side of the street to the other, which meant that the upstream aquatic animals would eventually die out. There was no genetic diversity, they couldn't migrate, they couldn't move forward. The other reason for stream crossing standards were stream hydraulics. So streams are not static systems, they are dynamic. They are constantly moving within their channel, and sometimes they're on one side, sometimes they're on the other side, and then over time, they do shift, just from regular stream dynamics. And you can see old oxbows where the stream had flowed in previous years. The last reason is to prevent flooding. So if the culvert is not in the correct location or appropriately sized, or it's not actually at the stream bottom, then there could be flooding upstream or downstream, depending on what the situation is with the culvert not being correct. So the main issues with culverts are sometimes they're undersized, so they're just too small to handle the flow of water. So use a little visual aid here. We pretend that this is the stream channel, right? Water's flowing this way. If we have a culvert this size in the stream and all of this is blocked, this whole volume of water cannot get where it's going. It's backing up and it's flooding somebody else. One example. Shallow stream crossings are ones that are just too high. So instead of being at the bottom of the stream, they're up here, which means that as in the low flow, July, August, when the water in the streams and ponds has reduced quite a bit, the water could be down here, it can't get to the culvert, right? So it stops the flow of water in that case.
Can I ask a stupid question?
It's not stupid, go ahead.
Okay. Culverts, are they specifically going like under roadways, or could they be natural culverts under, or is it something that?
Nope, a culvert is a pipe.
Okay.
It's just a pipe in the road.
It's covered over the top as well.
Okay, so it's something that we, man, have installed?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would just be the stream.
Because the road would
An
block
open
the
stream.
stream flow. If you
Okay.
put a culvert in to allow it to.
Okay, I want to make
That's
sure
a good question.
I was thinking the same, and I thought that was the case with your lid diagram, which I appreciate.
I'm not done yet. And so that means that there's not enough water for wildlife to pass through, right? They get stuck on the upstream side of a culvert, of a road. Perch crossings are ones that are too high. I'm gonna just- I'm gonna just do this.
Hold on.
So again, so before, we were on the downstream side, maybe now we're on the upstream side. So fish are trying to swim upstream, right? But the water is only here. They can't jump up into the culvert to get on the other side, to the rest of the water. So they can't reach breeding grounds, they can't reach spawning grounds, and that's a problem for them. So in 2014, the wetland regulations required that all streams meet stream crossing standards. And it refers back to this original, I think 2005 stream crossing handbook. So you can refer to the handbook, but the regulation is in place under bank, so the section that I gave you. All right, so stream crossing standards, this book, and the regs all talk about, there's a preference for open box culverts or open arches. So instead of, so this is our stream again, right? Here's the banks of the stream and the land under the stream that we have for jurisdictional areas, not the actual water. I lost my train of thought. So it's saying that instead of filling in this area, try to get the culvert to go completely over it. So you're not impacting the banks at all. Water can continue to flow. So we're taking out the culvert, putting something over the top of it. This is all an open system now. It can fluctuate, it can
So
rise and lower.
Ideally, you want the floor to be the riverbed or the stream bed.
Right.
Not a concrete culvert or a pipe.
Yep, trying to restore the river back the way it was, let it move so it doesn't cause flooding.
Right.
Support the road and then have an open system below it.
Yeah, I just figured I'd help, because her coffee cup cover wasn't helping on that particular one.
No, now you need the McDonald's arch, right? We use one half of the arch?
Well, I just
the
thought of
plate
the
in half.
coffee cup and the plate while I was sitting there, so I don't have an arch for you. The next thing is culverts should be embedded. All right, so if you're, it's like if you're in the airport and you're walking along and then you get to the motorized sidewalk and you sort of do one of those, and then when you get off, you kind of stop again. The culvert, the part underneath the culvert should be the same consistency, the same soil texture. This way, when wildlife is trying to get up or downstream, they're not sort of jolted by, I don't want to be in concrete, I want to stay in the sand, I want to stay in the rocks. It also is important for stream roughness. So if the water is just flowing along in a nice riffle with rocks and stuff, it's at a certain speed, then it hits concrete and it starts going really fast. And then it'll start to slow down again on the other side of the culvert, which could cause erosion. It'll gouge out the bottom, it'll take all that soil and dump it somewhere else. So trying to keep the river flowing the way it's supposed to flow. The width of the new culvert is supposed to be 1.2 times the bank full width. So if this is the stream, that's we're going to use this simplified, this is our bank full width. And so 1.2 times that is how you're trying to arch. You're trying to get from one side to the other. So now there's the regular channel, right, our regular flow of water going that way. But there's also dry area on either side of the stream so that critters can get back and forth across. They're not going over the road, becoming roadkill. They're not, getting hit by cars. It's avoiding that danger as well. It also allows a lot of sunlight and air to come in through the culvert, and so it's not creepy. So critters aren't going through a dark alleyway waiting for a little raccoon to snap them up at the end. They can see, and they can continue moving. Then there's something called the openness ratio, which is the same thing. It's a different calculation that I'm not going to explain. The substrate, we talked about the soil, should be the same consistency, so the same soil type upstream and downstream. as it is in the middle of the culvert. And the depth and velocity of the stream flow has to be done through a calculation. You can't just say, well, I have this pipe, I have to let all of this water through, but I don't want to do that, I'm just going to put this pipe in. You still have a significant amount of area that's blocked where water cannot flow the way it's supposed to flow. All of that is determined by hydrologic calculations. We look at the watershed area, how much water is actually there, how fast is it moving through the culvert area or through the stream. And it's usually done with a longitudinal profile that's supposed to be submitted to the commission for them to look at and say, yes, that's the appropriate size.
They have to be stamped by a PE too, right?
I'm sorry?
Those have to be stamped by a PE, right? Those
Has to be
counts?
done by an engineer, yeah. Replacing culverts, so that is required of all new culverts, right? Replacing culverts, as Mike mentioned, it needs to be done through the maximum extent practicable. And there is a definition for that. And it is that the applicant has made all reasonable efforts to meet the most, to meet all of it, all of the standards. The applicant has evaluated all of the different options and provided that information to the Conservation Commission for them to look at and say, yeah, you really did make the best decision. If it's not in full compliance, then they have to show that they have to implement the most practical level. So they're sort of presenting the commission with the different options, and the commission sort of balances the cost and, other factors involved, like land area or other site constraints that Keith and the Water Department have brought up. But the most important thing, like we talked about a few minutes ago with the burden of proof, they have to document this. They have to quantify all of the different options. They have to provide that actual evidence for the commission to make the decision, so it's not an arbitrary or capricious decision that won't be upheld. It's more than, we don't want to do that, we can't do that, or, here's my stream culvert right now, and it's just not right. Well, let's just do this. That's close enough, or it's better. It's not adequate under the regulations. They still have to show, well, this is what is supposed to be done. These are the reasons why we really can't do that, but we can back it down to something that's here. And the commission would look at that and say, okay, that's reasonable, or no, it's not reasonable. But
Defensible, too, is important.
The what,
It
Scott?
has to be defensible. So if they describe exactly why they're doing what they're doing and why they can't meet the exact stream crossing regs, they have to be able to defend it, because if we deny it for whatever reason and they appeal it, we have to be able to say, well, this is the reason why we denied it, and defend that. We can't just do an arbitrary, well, it looked like the pipe was big enough, so that's what they decided to do. If they have to do the calculations to show this is why they made the decision that they made, and this is why the limitations were there, whether they be other utility pipes or various other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But the more information that they provide, verifiable information, the easier it is for us to evaluate it and for them to defend it. So, does that make sense? Or
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't know, this might not be allowed right now, so if it's not, I understand. With the Leonard Street project, the culverts that are there, is it Highway that has to come before you and show what they can or cannot do, or is it the applicant? I'm a little bit confused on that part.
The applicant has a project before us, and it's their burden of proof to bring that information to the commission.
Can I pose that?
I'm trying not to overstep
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
supposed to
I
be
think I
talking
might-
about.
Can I pose it a different way? So if we know that we have to do road improvements, right? The town has to do road improvements. Does he have to come before the commission to say, look, this is a bridge we need, like the one that was just redone on Plain Street? Is it Plain, up by the Gertrude
yeah,
Forest?
that's a Mass DOT job, and they did come before us.
Okay, so even if it's something, and I'll just call it in-house, right, not third-party related, we have to make sure that we're following the same guidelines.
Correct. There's no exemption for a municipal project, if that's what you're looking for.
So,
All projects still have to meet wetland protection requirements.
and if in this case, what's there is not adequate, but for whatever reason, making it adequate is not possible at this point. Would you guys work with Highway to come up with a solution of, well, we can't do what the rules absolutely require, but leaving it is inadequate, let's get the best possible solution that we can? Or is that all on
With the information that's provided to us. It has to be documented
by Keith?
by whoever is proposing whatever project they're looking to do.
So as long as you have information in front of you on these are the potential options we can do, then you make a decision on what the best option is.
Our consultant on a particular project and others has very meticulously outlined what information needs to be submitted in 3 letters. So,
I have,
yeah.
you got about 2 or 3
I
colors.
can't talk about the project.
You know what, now we have to replace.
Like around town, just in general around
On
town?
Main Street, there's one that's rotted out.
Yeah.
Not this project, closer to Plain. And,
Yep, and we drove that today, and I've already contacted our engineer to see if they'd give an estimate, and hopefully I've got $11,000 left in municipal vulnerability preparedness training funds to try to get the design work.
see, this is what the problem is. I've replaced these culverts in town for 20 years. No engineering, took them out, put new ones in, and now we're gonna spend a lot of money because we have to engineer them. And I've talked to other towns, and they said they never heard of this before, that they work with conservation, rip them out, put them in, and got them done one day, and it cost about $1,000. So I don't know why we can't work and replace these. Other towns do it, and I don't know why we have to have engineers looking at a pipe in the ground that we can rip out, and I can put it back together, I can try to make it a little bigger or whatever. If we have a problem with flooding, then we'll look at a different situation. Engineering should be, right now, Walker Street, West Hodges Street, and Richardson Ave. Those culverts right there, yes, they're very big, and we need, that has to be engineered. Those are the ones you work on. These small little pipes in town, they shouldn't have to be engineered. We should just go in there, fix them, and get out of there. That's what I'm saying, that's what I think we should do.
Well, it sounds like the regulations have changed, so even though we did something years ago, that doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it now. And I'm not a big fan of, well, other towns aren't doing it. I gotta tell you, like, I don't like when I hear that, because that's not telling me that other towns are doing it right, and I think we need to do it right. And I don't know what right is, right? Like, you guys, the Conservation Commission, I mean, you're up on the regulations, that's
The state comes
that's your
up with this.
ballpark,
They
but.
define exactly what's
Yeah.
allowed, and they have it written down, and, I mean, it's,
The commission is held to those regulations, and so it's their job to enforce and administer the act. And I can appreciate, Keith's point of view, and we disagree professionally, but that doesn't mean we disagree personally. Whenever you have culvert projects, I try to help you with the application, and we try to get grant money for you. So we'll continue to do that, but we are held to the standard that we have to administer the act, and if that requires engineering calculations to make sure that it is the correct size, then that's something we have to administer, and we have to enforce that. But I'm more than happy to continue working with you to try to get you the money that we need to do the projects in the fashion that we have to do them. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine. One thing we have a problem with is, when you try to, you can't make these pipes, most of these pipes you can't make bigger because you have the gas main and you have the water main. You try to make it bigger, you can't, unless you're gonna lower one and raise one. Now you might as well, when I did Dean Street, it took me almost a month and a half to do that job because we had everybody go in there and lower it. But we're talking a 20-inch pipe. The gas companies, they probably won't even lower it. But that's, you can do the
But that's something the engineering company would review and work with the utility companies to try to come up with a solution for that.
Would the expectation be in those situations that the utility company would be asked to relocate existing pipe to accommodate the culvert? Or is that a situation where you've demonstrated that you've tried to do things to the maximum extent practicable?
It could be either way. It depends on the project, depends on the location, depends on the soils, depends on how much stream flow there is. And that's why we go to outside outside professionals for that kind of information.
So Mike, can I just ask, why don't we budget for this? Like I mean, Keith, I get the sense that you have a really good feel of what things are, going down the drain that are gonna need to be replaced. Like, do we plan for that? And like understanding that we potentially would have to get engineers, do we account for that in the budgeting process?
We could account for it if we had the money. I mean, if we had the money, Jennifer would have a full-time clerk. If, it all depends, it's just the lack of money, the lack of finances to be able to pay for
Well,
stuff.
I understand, but do we know that those costs are out there? I guess is my question, right? And then, like, just understanding, like, hey, this is everything that we see coming before us, and again, back to priorities. We may not be able to fund it, but if we have an idea and we budget for that, we can at least, we know up front, look, Keith, these are things you're not going to be able to do because we're not going to have the funds for it, or we can't get an engineer in versus, and it's up to him to prioritize what's in the worst shape. Or maybe that's no, I imagine that's your responsibility, right? And then we go for, I mean, I would just think that we should look at these holistically and have the responsibility of these are the things that are going to be on a schedule that we know are going to happen. And based on the existing regulations, we anticipate that we're going to need engineers, and this would be the costs.
So we did the municipal vulnerability preparedness training, and you got that report, and Bill Napolitano from Serpide came and presented that to you, I think, a couple of weeks ago, where we did itemize and list flooding number of times, culvert replacement, some bridge replacement, that department heads and other people in town had identified as potential problems. We have the money, I believe, for a multi-hazard mitigation plan. Once that plan is written, and part of that will come out of this MVP process, we would be eligible for state funding. We can use 319 grants, we can use the hazard mitigation funds, but we have to have the multi-hazard mitigation plan in place, and that's a great place for Keith to list each and every one of those areas as a priority, and that would, give us a boost for all of the funding. So similar to how we continue to use grant money for repairing Reservoir Dam and Chartley Pond Dam, we would be able to use those types of funding options for culvert and bridge replacement.
And Keith develops his Chapter 90 plan every year, so if there was a small culvert replacement, it could be on his Chapter 90. But the larger ones, like Walker Street, I mean, that was something that was talked about when we developed the MVP plan.
I tried
that's
twice.
something we definitely need grant money for, because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that.
So is everything that we anticipate that's going to need some sort of upkeep in that MVP right now?
A significant portion of it, but
Priorities, yeah.
in order to go to a different pool of money, we have to have the multi-hazard mitigation plan. But most of the information in the MVP report would be funneled into this multi-hazard mitigation plan. We would also funnel in the emergency action plans and the operation and maintenance plans that we have for both the reservoir and Chartley Pond Dam. That would be funneled into that report as well. So there's a lot of information that we already do have. It just needs to be repackaged.
How do we package that? Like with
I think we have the funding for it, right? Okay. So we just need to do the RFP.
Yeah, it's something that's in the works.
Mhm.
It's just, we have to, it takes time.
Yeah. Are there fines or penalties associated with not following the river crossing guide? So if we continue to replace them, just pipe in, pipe out?
They might be considered wetland violations that DEP might take action on.
Okay. So there is a risk to continue to do things the way it sounds like we've been doing them?
There is a risk. I don't know if we're on DEP's radar or not to look for that.
Now, since we just talked about it in open meeting.
I mean, it is a risk, but
Okay. So it sounds like this is something that we need to account for moving forward, both in terms of time and schedule as well as cost to get the engineering done, and just understand that this is the way things need to be done per the state. It sounds like it's not up to you guys. You're not doing this out of your desire. It's a prescribed requirement from the state.
Correct. The commission's whole purpose is, does the project meet these regulations? And that's why we hire wetland consultants as well, to help us review things that are things that we don't see very often. Culvert replacement, hydrology calcs. We don't have an in-house engineer, so we have to hire out for that. Yeah.
Do you have sorry, Keith?
I only have like 2 months out of the year to do any of this work because it's dry. Like right now it's dry, so we'll go out and check all the drainage systems around the whole town, and we'll see what they look like. We'll repair catch basins all year round if we can. But the Linda Street, that pipe has a hole in it, and I would consider that an emergency, because if it collapses this winter, we'll have to close the road. I've been patching up and patching it, so.
Right.
I mean, we can leave it until we get it engineered, but
Or you guys can talk about it on Monday
That's the plan.
and let us know. Or we'll find out.
Different culvert, but yes, we can
yeah.
certainly, conservation meetings are open public meetings. If you have an issue, you do need to ask to be placed on the agenda in writing, but you'll be given time.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Keith, what you just said about the culvert that has a hole in it. So if it's been repaired and there's still a hole in it, Jen, is there any reason why conservation couldn't allow for an emergency repair with the understanding that next year engineering comes in and we go back and we do it right? Because obviously, if we lose the road in the middle of the winter, it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more money and inconvenience to the people down there.
This culvert is the first I'm hearing of it today. We went and did a site inspection. But there is an emergency certificate process under Wetland Protection Act.
DEP is usually pretty good about that, at least for environmental issues. If you have an emergency with asbestos or whatever, and it's an emergency, they usually give you the ability to do the work and then go back and do what you have to do to fix it by the regs. I'm not exactly sure about wetlands. John would know better than I would, but I know for the DEP and general contaminated sites, they're usually pretty good about following emergencies.
So that might
The emergency certificate we've usually used for septic system repairs where somebody's constantly pumping, but there is a provision that requires a full notice of intent permit application to be submitted to the commission within 30 days. That doesn't really give Keith enough time to prepare a permit application in the meantime, but if it's an emergency, we can go out and look at it.
So I think from my point of view, with all the issues with the roads, from my point of view, would be absolutely conservation rules and regulations have to be followed, to the greatest extent possible. But at the same time, I would hope that you guys were able to work together so that if there was an emergency situation, that there could be a short-term fix, so that we don't risk losing a road over the winter or whatever the risks may be, with the idea that it would be fixed to the full extent the following year or whenever the weather allowed it for it. Because I know you guys both have, the best interests of the town at heart, and you both are, and the commission, you're all working very hard. But I'd hate to see something just get ignored because it doesn't meet the letter of the law, and then we've got a huge inconvenience and a huge expense 2 months down the road.
Well, I mean, even if it's an emergency repair, it could be a permanent replacement repair, you know what I mean? If it's a steel pipe that's in there that's rusted and collapsing.
If you're gonna take it out,
You can't repair that, you have to take it out and put something in. So that's not something that you're gonna go back and take it out next year, just.
No, but I'm
Wait,
saying if
duct
it's
tape?
too small and
Yeah, my
said duct
grandson
tape?
would
That's what-
want you to use the flex tape or something like that.
Oh, the spray stuff.
Like,
You guys can't use that
Doesn't
spray?
work. trust me.
Keith has used that before.
I used it in my waders.
But, so I mean, I just wanted to clarify that, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to go in, but it might not be a repair that they would go back and fix permanently the next year, because the repair might be a permanent fix, or a long-term fix.
But the one we're talking about is brand new. We just talked
Yeah.
about it today, so we can certainly go off together and
Well-
figure out
Fix
how
it.
to take care of it versus speculate.
So, hey Keith, I just want to ask, is it really dry out there right now? Because we've had a significant amount of rain.
Well, before the rain, it was dry, it probably still is.
Yeah?
I haven't walked around really today, but that color I'm talking about, one side still had a little water in it, so I couldn't even touch it. The other side's dry, so hopefully within a week it'll be dry or whatever, and we can rip it
Yeah.
out.
Most of the rain we've had has been like intense, so it comes and
And goes?
just goes.
Yeah.
It runs off.
It's not sinking
Some
in.
years, some years you can't even touch them, there's so much water. And you try to replace a pipe when it's wet, it's just, it's hard.
Do you find a lot every year, ones that, do you find a lot of the culverts every year that are in really, really bad shape, or do you see it coming?
The only ones that are really, right now, we gotta worry about is West Hodges Street.
Yeah.
That's in really poor shape. And,
Was it from this past
Wagner
winter?
Street, just, it's so old, they're just old, and they're deteriorating. They're that.
Right.
Richardson Ave, they did, the highway department did it probably 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I remember they tore out the wooden bridge and dropped in the, what are they, 4-foot or 5-foot pipes?
Yeah. So, those we really have to look at.
Concrete.
We added the
I
budget
know.
maintenance so that the.
No, I think they're metal.
Situation.
Those are metal pipes that walk.
Yeah, they're all metal.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't believe in using concrete back then. Anything else?
No, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate the dialogue.
We'll just keep our fingers crossed that the applicant comes through with the right information Monday.
Yes.
Okay, now we're on to an update on the water treatment plant.
Yeah. You're staying there. I'm like, oh, should we?
Yes.
I wasn't sure where we were in the agenda.
Set?
All set. Tell us good news.
My name is Scott Arrowhead. I'm a new member of the Norton Water and Sewer Commission, and I'm here to give you guys an update on the water treatment plant that is being constructed on Plain Street. So originally, the plant was supposed to be ready to start testing at the end of September, early October of this year. It had to get pushed back till December. You guys don't want to hear that. There's a legitimate reason now, which I'm going to explain to you guys. I'm not sure if you're aware, but wells 4, 5, and 6, which are the ones that are being hooked up to the plant, supply 90% of the water that we get delivered to us in town. And they have to be taken offline, obviously, to be clean before they can be hooked up to the treatment plant. And this is our worst time as far as the water demand and lack of rainfall, as we just discussed. So the amount of water available is lower in the summer. And so it was not ideal to take them offline now, because we still have to meet current demand for people who use water now. And so it was decided to push it back to the fall to take them offline and start the testing in December. And assuming the testing comes back okay, they will have to find labor. They need people to run the plants, and that's kind of a challenge that Frank is dealing with right now, hiring. So that's hopefully going to get done shortly. But
So Scott, I believe that Luke had said, after meeting, like I asked him to go back to see what was typical length of time for testing, and I believe he told me like 2 to 3 months. So are we looking at best, like this treatment facility being online in early Q2 of 2020?
I was talking to Frank about it today, and he told me it's not as long of a process to
No? Okay.
test the water. Maybe 2-3 weeks, once we clean the wells out, which takes a while, take it offline,
Yeah.
clean it out, hook it back up to the treatment system, run water through the system, and then you have to dump it, which is one of the questions we have for DEP right now. Because we're talking 72 hours straight from each well. That's a lot of water that's being wasted, and it also is a problem to manage it. You can't just dump it in the ground, thousands and thousands of gallons. So we're hoping that they only require us to do one of the wells to waste, and if that comes back okay with the testing, then we can hook up the other 2 to the system, and then deliver it to the people. So that's
Okay.
the plan, but it's still up in the air. He had a call in the DEP this week, and the person he was talking to was on vacation, so we're hoping to hear back on Monday what's going on with that. So that's kind of where we're at.
But it's definitely not this year, based on,
December, maybe?
you guys are going to clean up.
Christmas miracle?
Right.
How was the project, I know schedule's living, but in terms of cost, is it still on budget to the best of your
Yeah, they've kept up their budget. They have a time limit that they have to be done by a certain time, or they have liquidated damages that they have to pay
Okay.
for every day beyond the deadline, which we did extend for them. So it was originally October, now it's back to December, but if they don't meet that December deadline, then they have to give money back to the town in liquidated damages, so, but they're on schedule now. They have, a lot of the float has been used up, but they still have room.
Okay.
So as long as the weather holds up, we should be okay.
Right. And do we, I know it was discussed a few times, but do we have any insight as to rate increases?
Yes, we do. We have a public meeting scheduled for the day after the special town meeting on, I think it's August 27th,
Okay.
on Tuesday. And we had a municipal accountant come in, well, they came in months ago and started working on
Excuse me, guys?
rate hike options
We can't hear up here.
based on all the people that are using the system now, betterment fees that they received, projects that we're currently paying for, projects that we've already done that are still paying loans for. All that information was digested by the accountant, and they came up with options for different schedule increases over the next 5 years. So they presented it to us at our last meeting, and we discussed it a little bit, but we decided to, we had to do a public meeting to explain it to people and let them understand, what the different options were for whether they want a bigger increase now and then leveling off, or if they want to kind of have it ease up over time. So that's on August 27th, like I said.
Who ultimately makes the decision about which option to go with? Is it the commissioners?
The commission votes on it, right?
Okay.
And that's going to be in the library, I believe. So I'll obviously, it's going to be posted tomorrow in the Sun Chronicle, but I'm not sure exactly where they're at with that, so.
The public meeting in the library?
Yes.
So you mean, okay.
If they can get it, I haven't heard yet, so I'm not sure.
Okay. And do you know when the rates would be effective?
Effective in the third quarter of 2020.
Okay.
So it'll have to be voted on at the town meeting in the fall, I guess, and that's why we have to get information on all the other departments who are going to have to adjust their budgets. And then it will go into effect, like I said, in Q3 2020.
So the commissioners would vote on the option to present to town meeting?
Right.
Okay, then
Correct.
the townspeople would need to vote
Right.
on the proposed rate, and then it would
Right.
go into effect Q3.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then would that Q3 time period change if you didn't hit the target of December or January to go online? Or is that going to hold because of the debt we have to pay back?
We do have a debt, and with the SRF program, which is how we're paying for the $12 million treatment plant, we don't have to pay now, and we don't have to pay a lot next year. I think it's $158,000 next year. And then the year after that, though, it jumps up to $660,000 per year for the next 20 years. So we have to pay for that no matter what, as far as the treatment plant. Obviously, we'd prefer to have clean water delivered before we hike the rates up. But,
Yeah.
But that's the plan, is to start it in Q3 2020.
On the three options.
Yep.
Are you going to have it as, are any of them, how we have the bills now where you have the water rate and then you also have, I think it's a capital
Oh, for this.
payment? Are you going to have it as one?
It was presented to us as the average user rate and then the minimum user rate, so I'm not sure how it's going to look on the bill
I
itself.
just didn't know if they still split it out, that it was a capital charge.
Right, there was a water charge,
And
a
it-
sewer charge, and a capital charge
Right.
on the bill. I'm not sure exactly that. I can find out for
Okay.
you, though.
No, because I didn't know if maybe like the water treatment plant might be into capital.
It's shown on the spreadsheet that we have exactly, what's where, but as far as on your
Okay.
bill, I don't think you'd see exactly what pays for what.
Okay.
What happens if at town meeting, people don't vote to accept the new rate?
Well, we have what's called retained earnings, that we're supposed to keep a certain amount of money available. And we have a decent amount of money now because we don't have to pay for the plant yet. But he showed us a chart of what would happen if we didn't increase rates at all, and it just, within 3 years, we're at negative, like 75%
Okay.
of what we're supposed to be for the retained earnings. So, and then it goes even worse every year after that. So it's obviously possible if that's how it's voted on, but the math wouldn't work.
Right.
So
Does town meeting vote on the rates?
they vote on the option that we select to affirm that, I believe. I have to verify that with Frank, but I believe that we select the option and
Look
then
at that, 'cause
they vote to
That's not
confirm it.
dangerous. That doesn't sound quite right.
usually the commissioners would have the authority to set the rates, but I'll have to look and check.
Yeah, that might be the case. I'll find out, though.
Yeah, no, because they,
I mean, I
You
would
have to
almost
be
think
able
that
to
the
pay
town
for
would
it.
give, like, vote on one of the options, and the commission would,
Now that I think about it, I think, I wish I had the answer for you for sure.
That's all right, we'll-
But,
We threw it
we have
up.
the public meeting in 2 weeks where we present it.
Mhm.
Then we take that information, there's a 2-week, or 2 or 3 week feedback period after that meeting where we presented it, where people tell us what they think of it or offer for change ideas. And I think then we can select the option. I think that is final.
yeah, I would think.
But I'll find out for sure exactly
you're
how
right.
that works.
and don't feel like you need to know the answers now. It's
I know a
certainly
couple, but not
the
many.
case.
I'm still the new guy.
Any other questions? Have we grilled them enough?
I think it's going to be an interesting meeting on the 27th.
Yes, should be popular.
Well, thank you very much for
You're
coming
welcome.
and
Thank you,
speaking
guys.
to us, Scott.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Okay. Now a discussion regarding Juniper Beach.
We delivered letters to all the homes along Juniper Road, because at your last meeting, you had talked about removing the boulders, and the suggestion was made that we have a discussion with people on the street to see what they have to say about removal of the boulders, and we do have people here.
Yeah, I would assume you're from down in Juniper Road?
Yeah.
So if you want to, we don't, you live there, so we basically want you to tell us what you prefer.
While somebody's walking up, I did get an email today from a resident, and this resident said, "Good morning, Mr. Units. My name is Joe Maloney. My wife and I have lived at 17 Juniper Road since 1980. Because we feel that the boulders act as a deterrent to overuse of the beach as a boat launch, we would like to see them remain in place. On the weekends, we see a fair amount of boat traffic, and we are concerned about boat trailers being parked on the street. Sorry I couldn't attend the meeting to voice our concerns, Joe Maloney." And I did have another resident come in to visit me who doesn't live on Juniper Road, but likes to go kayaking and felt it would be better if the boulders were removed. So those are the only two that I've heard from personally.
I agree with Joe Maloney. There is copious amounts of traffic on Juniper.
Just state your name so that Jen can get it.
Oh,
I reckon.
Margaret Esperian.
Okay, thank you.
And I've lived there for 41 years, and, you know, there's loads of traffic. I'm thrilled to death to see everybody enjoying the beach with their boats and everything.
Uh-huh.
But I think if you took the rocks out, there'd just be too much more speeding. And, you know, I said it's very, very busy,
Mhm.
quite heavy traffic. It's a lot of fast traffic,
Right.
considering it's such a short street. And I really think it'd be terrible if they took the rocks out now.
Okay.
I think there'd just be that much more speeding in and out of the beach.
Yeah, we're trying to help out. We have so few options, but we don't want to make things worse for you down there either.
And the rocks have been there for so long, I don't know why they'd want to get rid of them now.
It was presented to us by one person
Yeah.
who had mentioned it, and so
Okay.
that's why we wanted to get a consensus or a feeling of the community.
I think the reason was because right now, people have to come down and they have to turn left and go down Lazy Lane and then go around the houses.
Yes,
and
but
then
I
come
think
in
it's
that
better
way.
because they have to slow down a little, where they come speeding up the top of the road where we live.
If you want to
Pretty
speak,
fast,
could you
some
come
of
up, please? Just so that we can get you on camera and everybody at home can hear.
So I actually live at the Rocks. Me and my fiance live there for nine years now. We watch kids play at these rocks. There's no park for the kids to play at. So the rocks is their sanctuary. That's their safe place, where we actually have cameras on our street and we monitor how they're speeding. We watch. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've not only been not able to get into our property because people are, figuring out they're speeding down and they're stopping in front of our house and be like, oh, wait, this isn't how to get here. And although removing the rocks for them may seem easier, they don't live there. A lot of them are Mansfield, they're Easton, they're people that don't know how the street actually is. So a lot of times they go around the corner and they're okay, and everyone seems very calm and confident about going around the corner, like Miss Peg says, and people are speeding down that street. And if that rock's removed, guess where they're speeding to? Right where people are coming around that corner, right where the kids are playing right by the fawn where the frogs go. It would be a chaotic mess. Being a nurse, I see people all the time getting hurt or hit by cars. And I would hate for the children, and my niece who lives on the street as well, to be one of those kids.
Can I just interrupt you for one
Go ahead.
second?
Yeah.
Can you just give Jen your name,
Michaela
please?
Everett.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so removing these rocks will be a chaotic way for people to come in and out. Not only that, but I know living right by the rocks, that's also our safe haven. We feel safe. We feel separated away from the boaters. We can at least have a calm night in front of the fireplace, not have people speed up and park in front of the house and be like, oh, hey, I don't mind that people walk through the kayaks and the boats that are coming from alternate streets. But when it comes down to removing the boulders, for them to just leisure in and out, it also gives us a sense of peace. Where okay, we know at a certain amount of time we can look past the boulders and see people leaving the beach when times get dark. If those boulders are there, I feel like people are going to be trespassing all night. They're going to be trying to come with their kayaks at night. We're already having that problem where people are coming out at 11 o'clock at night. We'll hear boats screeching, we'll hear trucks screeching, we'll hear brakes, and that's not a problem. But if the rocks are to be removed, guess where they'll be screeching at? Right in front of our house. We're trying to raise kids on that street. We're trying to raise our first child on that street. And it's a scary thought to know my kid could be right outside and we have to remove now just for the boats to go by because we're right there. So if we was to have those boulders removed, what's going to happen is people are going to speed on up right through the street and they're going to be like, oh, hey, freeway. It's a free-for-all. Right now, we have a sense of protection, and it feels like protection. It feels like, hey, we're home. We can enjoy the beach. Everyone can enjoy the beach. Why not go around the corner? That gives people time to slow down. Their boats time to kind of catch up to speed themselves because people are coming in with very large boats. Removing those boulders, guess what's going to come in? Even larger boats. And some of those boats should be on ocean, not in a small lake, Me and my fiance, we study the body of water very frequently. We study who's down there. We study who's going by, who's stopping in front of the house. And we don't mind stopping in front of the house, but just remind yourselves that we're paying to live here on this street. We're paying our mortgage. We're paying the bills. We're taking care. We even cut the grass by the boulders. We take care of that property. When people are down there on the beach, guess who goes at the end of the night and picks up the bottles? I do. The cigarette butts, I do. Me and my fiance, we stay doing. Miss Peg will come down and be like, do you see what's going on? I'm like, yeah. But that's our sense of comfort. We come together as a community to be like, hey, this is wrong. And like you guys said, maybe the one person did oppose and did want the rocks removed. I don't think that person lives as close as we do to the water. And it's chaotic.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else, does anyone have any questions or anything?
No, I think I just have more concerns. I mean, it's unfortunate that they're worried about, I agree with you, right? People are going to speed if you remove those, but the fact that they're speeding already and they're coming down with boats, and are the boats, what are the limits for boats on the res? I mean, it's not a...
I don't believe there are limits.
There are. They posted a piece of paper down the beach.
People take them down.
Very recently. But it's only like a piece of
Yeah, but
paper. It's got about
people
50
don't
rules on it.
pay
So
attention.
I
Yeah.
don't think most people don't read it, but because we live there, we
You
read
guys
it.
have, yeah.
But I don't think the boaters actually read it.
But there's no limitations on the size of the boat or types.
No.
No, it's
I
hours.
enjoy seeing the boaters
Yeah.
being able to enjoy the beach. We
Right.
can't
We have-
anymore.
I know. The perks of it, huh?
So, I mean, there were the limitations of time and things like that, and the fact that we wanted them to wash their boats down or something to that
Right.
effect.
And speed limit near the
Even a
shore.
speed limit
Yeah.
would really do justice. I do fairly believe that. A speed limit or maybe a sign that says, hey, an actual sign. Right now, we have a piece of paper that, yeah,
Wasn't he?
something to help with the speed.
Have we done-
Like I said, kids are trapped in this
For
neighborhood.
water.
Kids don't have a safe haven.
What was it
But
for?
those rocks, guess what's down there? They have bubbles down there. They have little squirt guns that they can use right out the water for each other. And they sit on those rocks and they play. So I watch these kids every day. I watch them grow up. I give them all popsicles bi-weekly. You know, I'm the pantry lady of the complex. Kids are always coming to my house and they sit on the rocks and they throw away their trash right by the gate. But they sit there and they enjoy their time. There's no sanctuary for these kids. And I feel awful because I grew up in a neighborhood where I could, you know, run freely. Unfortunately, with the boaters coming down, the only safe place for these kids is either in my locked-in yard or by the rocks. And I would just hate for that to be gone for them and they've already get yelled at by the boaters. You know, the kids
Yeah.
need a safe haven.
Anyone else? And before you even start, I'm going to ask you for your name.
Yes. I'm Paula Stearns, Lazy Lane. So I know Jack and Renee both came down prior to becoming the new Board of Selectmen's.
Yep.
And the discussion was, what are the possibilities if those boulders were removed? And it opened up, you know, a little bit of what's going to happen on the other side of it where Lazy Lane comes into the water, where they bring the boats down. And there was another gentleman here, is it Dwayne? Dwayne. That he also felt at the time that we had a discussion here, it would create a chaos of people trying to come down Juniper, continue onto the beach, and then other people trying to come in Lazy Lane and coming around, and it's going to be a cluster mess of people trying to come in and come out. I don't know if removing the boulders we're going to do justice or if it's going to create more of a mess. We discussed this. But we also talked about limiting the number of vehicles that were being down there. I'm literally 20 feet from the water. My house is very close. So I get all of the vehicles parked in front of my house, across the street from my house, up the side of my house. I don't know where they would all go if the number of vehicles were limited. I think they were going to end up parking on Juniper. That was also mentioned. Because where are they going to now go? Because there's no parking spot for them anymore if the boulders are opened up. Even though beyond the boulders and in towards the water is technically Juniper Road. It's always just been shut down from a former selectman who used to live in Kayla's house. It was a late-night delivery drop-off. We've discussed that. Because the kids were coming back down in the 80s, doing 50 miles an hour, hitting the sand at the beach, which there's no more sand anymore. It's all gravel, because the town has come in and they've put gravel in there. But I'd like to see some limits with number of vehicles down there. I'm there, I call the cops, they come down, the people have already left. 2 o'clock in the morning the other night, 11 o'clock the night before. It's open access, public access, 24/7. I don't understand how it can just be 24/7 access for people to come in and go. They were out there the other night getting their boats off the water. Nobody's monitoring it down there. Periodically, I do see the police officer come in and drive in, they turn around and they leave. But I understand they can't be there 24/7 either. But is there a way to gate it off at a certain time? We did discuss that prior in the last meeting. Watson's Pond has it. They have a gate that closes. Somebody's going to have to be responsible for doing that. Is it legal to block it off at, dusk when they're supposed to be out of there? But nobody follows the rules. They just put that new sign up. And I think it was the aquatic gentleman who was here for the last meeting that I was here present with. And he laminated those, and he stuck a couple up. One on the board that the Boy Scouts built, one at the sign at the trash barrel, which is constantly overflowing and, like she said, picking it up. I get a lot of it in my yard because it's blowing from there. I'm picking it up. Had another resident say she's picking up needles in the past. She's a former nurse. But, I mean, something has to give down there. It's been overtaken by many, many people over the years, and it's getting worse. I've brought in pictures. I have them if you'd like to see them today. Again, with 20 vehicles, with trucks, boats. We had a power boat over there, 2 of them the other day, just screaming across the water. Like a legit one-person seater puts the helmet on and goes through it. I don't know what the regulations for something of that type of speedboat on the water. I don't know if there's any, but
I'm not aware of.
I have photos of it.
I believe you.
You know, they're just getting bigger and bigger, and nothing's being monitored down there. So, and the parking, it's not a parking lot.
Right.
But it's been created to be a parking lot now. And they're on the back side of it and, you know, or up the street. They're not dealing with it directly for, you know, all night long. They come down from the street and they sit there, right, I don't know, all hours of the night. I just can't express that enough. I mean, I have my daughter here. She's listened to people fighting out there. 11 o'clock at night, they're out there. By the time I do call the police and they come down, they've vacated, or they've loaded their boat up and they're gone, you know? And they're in the pitch black out there. I don't understand how they even see what they're doing out there. There's no lights down there at all. I don't know if bringing a light in there would create more people welcoming them, or, you know what I mean?
No matter what you do, you
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly.
Yes. But, I mean, I think, well, obviously something needs to get done. I used to work a second shift job, and I'd come in at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, 12:31, and then I'd have 4 o'clock boaters sitting there, you know? And then, now I'm on days, but, again, at these late hours, I don't understand how it can be rectified at this point, and the number of vehicles coming in and out of there. But,
Mr. Units, could we have, talk to Chief Clark about making that a routine, that the patrol car go in there at least, like maybe on an hourly basis or whenever they're in that area?
now, 4th of July weekend, we had 2 gentlemen come down, and I don't remember their names now, but they were part of the police department, and they were doing some kind of an assessment. They had spoken to myself and a neighbor. I don't know how the other many people that they were able to speak to that day, but they were just watching people coming in and going. They were trying to figure things out,
Right.
trying to get an idea of what was going on down there. 4th of July weekend wasn't very busy. It was probably like at 9:30 in the morning, and I was just about ready to head out, but there was probably around, I'd say 8 or maybe 10 people that were there at the time, but I think to them it was kind of confusing as what could be done as well.
I mean, no one should be there from dusk to dawn anyways. So
But it is open, so people
Right.
come. They do their thing and whatever that might
But
be.
that's why I'm saying, at least if we can get a police car on a routine basis, I mean, I'm not going to solve the whole thing, but at least.
But if
maybe
you
we
go
can-
down an hour after people shouldn't be there?
Exactly, and go
and
down every
clear it
hour.
out, yeah.
And just drive through.
And why aren't, if it says no trespassing, why aren't fines being given out?
Well,
Maybe that would be deterrent for
That's
them
what
to
I'm
come
saying.
there all these hours, you know.
But the police have to go down there and,
Mhm.
and not wait for somebody to call. If they could just, even if it's like, 3 days a week, that they, not on a regular basis, but they make
Yeah.
that part of their routine patrol and start ticketing cars or forcing these guys to get the vehicles out of there because they're not supposed to be there from dusk to dawn.
Right.
So why
Yes.
don't we see
Why
if
don't we
can't-
enforce it?
Exactly.
So I think that, and Mike, who's responsible for the trash? Is that Keith and his crew?
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly don't like the fact that you guys have to go and pick up trash around the area, either. Like, is there something, can they increase their schedule to go and pick it up? Could they put another,
They usually go
receptacle down there?
once a week, they come and they take it.
so that's not enough, obviously, if it's getting blown around. Can we ask them
It was
about that?
filled with,
Because now he has 2 more folks, right? So he has a little bit more from a resource perspective.
Yeah.
What were the options? So Paula, we went over the options the last meeting, right? of-
I
of
remember-
The assessment?
Yeah, but I can't remember specifics.
I can't remember either, but it brought about this question of the removal of the rocks.
Right.
That was part of it.
But I think at least getting the police to go down there on a routine basis
Yeah.
to clear out anybody that's down there dusk to dawn, at least that's one step in the right direction. And also if we can get the
well,
pickup.
if they're on the water when the policemen come, there's nothing they can do to get them off the water. Now they've come trickling in at 10 o'clock at night, 10:30. My bedroom's on that side,
No,
so
I-
I'm hearing everything,
But-
20 feet from my door.
You tow the cars?
That's what I mean. They could, if it's no trespassing, have them tow the car.
Don't they have a hovercraft or something too to get on the res?
Well, the
fire department does.
has.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, I think having rules with no enforcement is akin to having no rules at all.
Mhm.
Right.
And you're
So-
seeing that right now.
I do it, yep.
So, I mean, even if the police, if they're on the water, even if the police car pulled in and it has lights,
Mhm.
I would assume that would attract the boater, and if not, call a wrecker and have it towed, if that's a legal option. I'm not a police officer.
I understand.
But, I mean, at the
Just
very
trying to
least,
get
you could do is
some-
ticket it.
Some relief down there. Every weekend, it's not, you don't look forward to your weekend when you're dealing with this every single weekend. And I understand the boat is like the water. Maybe they should sell 157 Mansfield Ave and buy Keith Silver's land. There's an answer.
No, I agree.
What is 157? It was purchased to make a boat launch.
Right.
They've taken a deeded beach and created it to a boat launch.
Right.
I know I couldn't go to your house and do something to your deed and change it, right?
No, I don't think you could.
So,
We actually own that land.
yes.
157 you're talking about?
What's that?
157?
No.
No,
I'm
the
talking about
water.
Juniper
the
Beach.
Juniper Beach.
We own that.
But how is it a deeded beach and then it
Well, you may
turns
have-
into the?
You might have deeded beach rights, but
Mhm.
we actually own the land.
Mhm.
Yep, I live across the reservoir from you, and I walk by sometimes and I see all the trash there.
Mhm.
Yep.
So if we were ever to really solve if we were able to create a dedicated boat launch, that still wouldn't necessarily prevent people from using Juniper Beach as a boat launch, right?
I think they would be more apt to go to the boat launch and a
Yeah.
place to park, yes.
Right.
And maybe it'd be more apt to, I think, the kids do go there and swim. I mean, they're in the water.
And you're right, the only possible place to get a boat ramp would be Silver's property.
Well, they purchased the 157 and then later, after the fact, found out that it was not deep enough.
Right, it's too
So it's too shallow.
So, and have we talked about trenching? Like, have we talked about making it deep?
We talked about that last time.
Yeah, is this the one that, like, farther out it's not?
Too
being-
shallow and too
Well,
shallow.
well, that was a poor purchase. So what are we doing with this land? So we have this land there now, right? That's town property. We're doing nothing with it. Can we?
Park and recreation sign is out there for kayaking, for kayaks. But you can't bring your vehicle down towards the water. You have to leave it up towards where the house is and bring your kayak,
Or canoe,
little canoe
The,
out there.
the water.
So can we have somebody look into whether or not it's fiscally responsible for us to keep that piece of property, or if we look to get rid of it? If we bought it for an intended purpose and now we can't use it for that purpose, is there a reason we're holding on to it? Can we look into that?
I'm assuming it's commercially zoned waterfront property and
Mm-hmm.
must have appeal to someone from a development standpoint. And thankfully, we have somebody who's on the IDC.
Right,
Could probably go
thankfully we do.
source something.
Yeah.
Who knows? Bargain?
I know at one time it was an insurance company that was renting it out, and then I heard that a town employee rents it out. So I don't know who lives there at the moment, but somebody does live there.
Yeah, we rent it out just to have presence.
Yeah, income.
Someone there.
Mhm.
And at one time, the Park and Recreation used to maintain like an office on the first floor, but it's not handicap accessible, or,
Right.
it's not,
Mhm.
it can't be the way it is, a public building.
Can it be a
Well,
community center with nice waterfront property?
Is gating Juniper at a certain time an option? Is that something that can be done? And we discussed it at the last meeting, that if they're in there at the time, they get locked in. Their vehicle is locked in. If they're not out of there within a half an hour of the dusk or at dusk,
Yeah.
then they
What-
get stuck there.
Why don't
The
we,
boulders would still be there,
Right.
and
How would that impact you as a resident,
what's that?
gating it?
No vehicles would be parked in front of my house.
No, I know, but you getting out, like where,
In other
what I'm
words,
trying to understand is where would the gates go so that you can still come freely?
Oh, so Lazy Lane comes in,
Yeah,
and it comes around in between the four little houses that are sitting there. Lazy Lane actually comes in between. There's a driveway and
Yeah.
it comes into, and then my driveway. If you would come around Lazy Lane and just continue straight down towards the water,
so kind of like right where it goes to,
Right.
it's dirt, right?
yes,
And then
right
you
at
put a
where
gate
is it
there.
dirt? There is a fire hydrant there. Right, like where Lazy Lane, if I was coming out of my driveway, the fire hydrant's directly across from there. So further down, you could put a gate there. There used to be a gate there years ago, like just a wire gate.
Like the
Not
fence
an
that has
opening,
been
a
knocked
fenced-in
over-
gate,
the fence
yeah.
that's been knocked
Because
over
people
and-
used to just have to, they were only allowed to walk there when it was a community, right? The
So-
Norton Reservoir.
We wouldn't have to fence
Yeah.
the whole property, just that side with a gate.
Right.
If we keep the boulders.
The boulders would
Yeah.
remain in place,
Yeah.
and then the entrance into the Juniper would be a gate closed at dusk.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody would have to reopen it
well, the police could have the
At-
key.
at the morning, sunrise, sunset, whatever the law is now, I don't know. The paper that was just posted is different than the signs that are up there at this time. So that kind of like fluctuates. And it doesn't matter, the signs are there, they're still there at 4:30,
Right.
5 o'clock in the morning anyways, and.
That's why I was suggesting having the police go down there
Mhm.
to more or less enforce it. But why don't we,
Yeah, definitely enforcing it is, I think, would be beneficial.
right, so if we can check with Chief Clark about, if they, first of all, about getting patrols down there, and then also tell them the idea that we would like to gate it and make them responsible for, at night, they go down, make sure everybody's out, and then lock it,
Mhm.
and then they could unlock it.
Or don't make sure everybody's out, as Paula was saying.
We've done that at.
Well, if they're not out, I mean, it's gonna
Well,
encourage them to know you gotta get
Well,
off
I
that
wanna
water
check
or
with
your
him
truck is
before
being
we-
stuck there.
We commit to do it
Mhm.
without his input.
You know, we have a big construction fence at my work right now, and we occasionally get people parking in there that shouldn't, and we lock them in, and you have to make a phone call of shame to get let out, and
Yeah.
you get a very real lesson on why you shouldn't be there. So I think that will go a long way.
Okay, so at least we're going to check on putting a gate there. We're going to check on getting the police to come down to enforce the dusk to dawn. And
Check on increasing
Can they-
trash removal. Or
Right.
another receptacle.
Yep.
And then can we check on the signs too, if we have sign, like hard signs posted
Well, that's what I
versus
just
other
mentioned
ones?
to Mike, that Keith was supposed to be getting metal signs made.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, make sure they're consistent.
Make sure what?
Okay, make sure that,
They're consistent.
she was saying that there's different times.
The aquatic signs just got posted,
Right.
which are
They
laminated.
made up like 15 of those laminated, and they put those
Right.
at Barrowsville and Winnicott and at the reservoir.
Yes. I believe 2016, there was some bylaw written for the times of the water.
Right.
And,
We put a different time on
Thank you
your
for telling
sign
me.
because we
And-
were trying to help you out the
Right, right.
last time.
yes, but there was also a mentioning of the watercraft, the ski-doos, or,
Oh, yeah, can we look
That-
at some regulations around the speed?
35 miles an hour.
that is posted on that paper that the gentleman just
When
posted
it's-
up there for the summer.
Winnicott and the reservoir are 35 miles an hour, and Chartley in Barrowsville is 15, and then 6 miles an hour within 100 feet of the shore.
We did talk about that last meeting too, didn't we? That's
believe
ringing a
so,
bell now.
yes.
So how do we enforce that if we don't have any
Well,
sort of
doesn't it say something on there
watercraft?
about what times the jet skis can be operating out there?
9 to 4,
9 to 4, Monday through Friday, or is it weekends too?
just as 9 to 4.
Just what, Carol?
Because I know the one over posted at,
Okay.
The
Did you
one-
hear her? Half hour after sunrise, half hour before sunset.
For the use of the ponds. Right,
Oh, yeah.
that's for the use of the ponds,
Mhm.
but the jet skis are a different time.
the jet skis were different, and the one over by the old Ann's place, they have like no Sundays or something
This is
with the
what
jet
was it?
skis. So that's different there than what's on here.
Right.
I think we need
We
consistent
need a uniform.
and
Mhm.
more than laminated signs as have been done. I know the ones that got put up were by the.
People are just so used to coming and going as they please there. That's the issue too. Like, that's just gonna, they've done it for so many years now, it's just, they're accustomed to it. So, they just don't even see the signs,
Yeah.
you know?
Mary, you want to see the sign? Here, you can pass it. Here, sit down.
I think he has one of them in his folder right there. I'm sorry, the one they just posted on the beach? Yeah, I think he has one right here.
I think the violations, the $150 would start going a long way if we start actually enforcing that.
Yeah, I do too.
I would really like to know, though, how we're going to enforce the speed on any
Juniper.
sort of water body without,
We really, you really can't. I mean,
well, I mean, if that means, you know, let's talk to the chief about it. If somebody stands there and they gun it and they wait for somebody to come in, I don't know. But,
possibly.
I mean, I think that's a safety issue, and I think that we certainly need to, thank you, Carol. I think we certainly need to figure out how to do
Well,
this.
Well, the,
I do too. Right now, I'd like to tackle the things that I
Yeah.
know we can take care of.
Yeah,
And then, once we get that, then we'll think
Yep.
about,
maybe with enough fines, they can buy a jet ski for the police department.
Right, well, that's what I'm thinking is, I mean,
And
if we
then they
find it,
can
like,
monitor it.
put money back into it, right? If
Right.
that means for whatever, to actually pay for signs or to pay for a gate, like I imagine we don't have money in the budget for a gate. So let's
Great.
make some revenue. I think
Yeah.
I said that about getting a cannabis establishment.
We,
So Paula, you had mentioned when Jack and I talked to you, I'm sorry, Mary. Go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think that we had discussed that in the last meeting, that if we could come up with some sort of money to have a seasonal police officer. down there, right? Because we really only need it during the summer period. So it's not like we would have to have an additional man full-time.
Right.
But again, it's a question of financing.
That'd be a good summer job for our college, right?
You never know, maybe even an internship where it's not somebody who's enforcing it, but somebody who's observing to call to say, hey, we need some assistance down here. I don't know. I think it's a good idea, Mary. Let's do it.
You were going to say something?
Yes. When Jack and I spoke with you previously, I thought you had mentioned that some time ago there was like a pavilion area with parking, potentially like a boat launch as well, that
Yep.
burned down?
Yes.
Can you school us
That
on
was the
that?
community building that was once there, off of
South Lakeview?
South Lakeview, yeah. Yes.
So is that available for a boat launch area?
I know that is one of the areas that Fish and Game looked at,
Yeah.
so I haven't heard, we haven't heard back from them yet. So I know that was one of the sites they looked at.
Because like I think about that, that sounds like a pretty big open space, right? Where we would be able to, if you can't have boats launch from there, right? You can have a bigger space, put them in a parking lot, maybe even charge a nominal fee for people to park there, like a couple bucks to maintain trash, whatever.
Yeah.
Is there, Mike, can we get a call to them, or can we get somebody to look into it to just see?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's an option, again, it's not gonna be something
The
immediately
town,
available,
the
but.
town owns that land too, right?
Yeah.
And right now, there's boulders all over there, so that's blocked off. Completely blocked off. You can't even get in over there. So,
Did it used to be, was it a boat launch area?
They did have one, 48 years ago.
Right.
Can we,
well, I've been there 27 years, so the building was gone before I bought down there.
can we try giving Fish and Game a call?
Yeah.
Just to find out
Can I
status.
just kind of briefly go over what we discussed in the water body? We talked about having an inspection program with they actually, a sticker program similar to Lake Pearl and Rentham. And
Thank you.
purpose is to inform the public of the bylaws and the invasive plant program to keep everything off it. But it's a fee schedule, and it'd be higher fee for motorboats as opposed to non-motorized craft, and also higher fee for non-residents, no fee for seniors or vets. Now, Rentham has police issue the stickers as they are enforcing and they are the enforcing authorities. We already talked to the Norton Police. We left the sign up there. The signs do say that that's supposed to call the Norton Police. Without enforcing something, you have no way to do anything. But if we did a sticker program, that would be money coming in, because they would pay for the stickers plus parking, and then the money would go to the Norton Police Department, and that would help for funding people there probably. Hopefully. I mean, this is just one of the things that we threw around at the meetings. We're trying to research as much as we can for it on the water bodies. We know that there's a problem there, and just installing the signs isn't enough. You
Right.
have to have an enforcement on it, you know. And we're also worried about the boats coming in there from other places and bringing more weeds from
Right.
other places and reinfesting everything that we already done.
Uh-huh.
So, we need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let us see if we can correct a couple of the things that we should be able to handle. And then after we do the easy things, then we'll try the hard ones.
I think it'd be fairly easy to do a sticker program.
I think what we have to check into that, Rentham may have bought Lake Pearl on their own,
Yeah.
but we got state funding to buy the reservoir, and I think there's a provision in there, I'll check with Jennifer, that we can't charge people to use the reservoir. So,
Well, we're not. We're going to charge them to use the
use the
ramp.
parking lot.
Right, we're gonna charge them that, to do
So,
parking.
I mean- I think,
Right.
I think that's something we'll have to look at if we say the fee is to maintain a parking lot, that might be different than using the reservoir, so we'll have to, we'll look
Yeah.
into that.
I know, I mean, I would assume if the state could build a ramp near the old pavilion,
Mhm.
I know the state just put in a new ramp in Somerset, in the Taunton River, and Somerset charges
Right.
to use that ramp. So, I mean, that state funds went into that, so.
Because I think they did, Fish and Game did say if they put in a ramp, we could charge for the maintenance of the parking lot.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, the ramp they
Pave
put in
paradise
Somerset
and
was
put up a parking
unbelievable.
lot.
So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, so we got a few action.
Yeah. It would be nice to see too, I mean, I don't know how big that space is, but even putting up a pavilion, you know, or like having area, like an open area playground or something too. I know I'm getting,
Right now, we need the parking lot, I think.
well, right now I think we need a boat launch. That's really a boat
Right.
launch, not somebody's front or backyard.
Mike's going to try calling the.
Yeah, let's get some
gentleman
revenue
from
out of him first.
Fish and Game. Is there anything else on, I assume we don't want to do anything with the stone, the rocks.
I would leave those there for
Yeah,
now.
let's
I think we heard
table
that
that.
loud and clear, so I appreciate the residents coming in and sharing their
Yes.
perspective.
Okay, discussion on remote participation.
Talk to us, Goose. Mike,
What was that?
I said talk to us, Goose.
Okay.
I'm getting into my song and movie. Time is it?
On the remote participation, that's just up to you.
Okay.
And then you have to decide what conditions you want to put on it. Do you want to allow boards to opt out? Say that boards don't have to do remote participation? That's something to think about. And I don't know how you'd regulate this. Is there something that you might want to put in there so that someone just doesn't become a remote participant of a board and every meeting say, I can't make it, I'll participate remotely, I can't make it, I'll call in. I mean, you know, it should be something that is a unique situation that,
So you're gonna check on the towns that are currently using it?
yeah, you should have a list.
Oh, sorry, I don't think I got that far in my,
These are just the ones that I've heard back from so far. And most of them do have it, and we just put down, Jen prepared this, all, whatever comments they had with their participation, so you could see some of their comments about it.
So last time we met, you had mentioned that the town has a Polycom?
Yeah.
So is that like just a conference phone somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Right there.
Oh, son of a gun. All right, so we could use it, right?
Yeah.
so is that something, Shane, are we tied into that phone? No?
No.
It would be, I could pick it up with the microphone.
Just like a person?
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking with them. Like it's not, it's far greater than the regular speakerphone that you used to hear.
Right. What about I mean, I guess we'd have to test it, right? Could people hear us? That would be the question. Especially, like, Jack, you and Brad are both soft-spoken. Well, Mary, you are too.
It's, so the way that I've seen it used many times and set it up is you put it kind of central of the meeting.
Yeah.
And they can hear you, it's noise canceling, you know, so when you hear keys and whatever, that's not picked up. It works very well.
Okay. I think this is something we should definitely look at adopting and allow various boards to make their own decision to opt in or opt out.
And do you still have what I gave you before? I can email it to you so you can review it again and another meeting vote on it with what you'd like as ideas in there.
And did, I think we asked you to go out to the other committees and boards, right? And seek their input? How many were you able to get?
I did, but we have not heard back from them. They're waiting till like Jen is meeting with Conservation on
Okay.
Monday night. So as they meet, they're going to ask.
Okay.
Are there any boards that, like, the one that comes to mind for me is Zoning Board of Appeals.
And planning would be important.
Is there any legal requirement that they physically be there for those type of,
No, I think that's the whole reason this is put in place. They have to have a quorum.
right,
An in-person quorum.
Right.
Yeah.
But say it's something that requires a fourth, fifth vote.
okay,
It could be important in a situation like that.
okay.
So we actually have, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we have the chair of the Charter Commission. Is this something that you guys have talked about?
Somebody looks like she might fall asleep.
Thank you. Yes, actually, that was one of the questions we had in our first meeting back in May. We had asked Lauren Goldberg if the town had already approved remote participation. I think it would be very helpful. We have a couple of people who travel for business, including myself, who may not necessarily be busy during the evening hours, who would be able to call in. I also think it's important for the fact that we are working within a confined timeline. We have a deadline to meet, and we need to vote on things, and we would prefer to have all 9 members being able to vote on all particularly important items. So it's critically important to us, I believe.
I'm sorry, Laura, can we just ask, any stipulations that you would want to see put in place?
The ones that were within the state guidelines seemed more than sufficient.
Okay.
So I thought they were adequate and they were reasonable.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So we'd have to think about logistically too, right? Like we have a Polycom for this room. I don't know, Mike, if we have others around or
They'd have to, if they're meeting up there,
like one of the desk phones and try speakerphone and test it out first.
that's why, they'd have to let us know in advance. A committee would have to take that wherever they're meeting.
And I believe-
Or if they had to, they could use their cell phone too, but
Well, also, I don't believe those are prohibitively expensive. I think they're a couple $100. Shane's kind of,
Moderate.
yeah,
Moderate at best.
yeah,
It's not regular phone wall.
yeah. I think probably like $700, I think is what I'd seen.
I think you can get them closer to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like a standard Polycom.
Yep.
No spiders.
Right. But maybe that's something that we can look at budgeting for in subsequent years, so any room that typically gets used would have the availability. I don't know what the infrastructure is to have, are these VoIP or,
It's just power and a regular RJ11 telephone line.
okay. So I don't know if we have telephone lines in the.
So is that one on right now? Because I only see one cord.
So it piggybacks to another device here.
Okay.
It's
And that device has both power and,
in the telephone.
okay.
Yep. So it's not voice over IP. That would be, that's a whole nother.
Yeah. We're not there yet.
Either 5 or 5 or
Thanks.
that boosts the price for you.
Okay.
You owe me Jack and
Gotcha.
Coke.
All right. And this is something that the board could vote to adopt. It doesn't need to go before any. Okay.
Okay, so
And what are, like, can we talk about, like, what are your initial thoughts on it? Is anybody completely opposed or all gung-ho to do it? You don't care one way or another?
no, I mean, if I'm not here, I'm not going to participate. So, I mean, it's just, as old as I am and haven't done these things for so long, I just automatically get up and go. If I'm not here, it's because I can't be, and I'm not going to want to be sitting on the telephone anyways. So, but I mean, if it makes it so other people can participate and they feel comfortable with it, I don't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm. What do you
But-
think, Mary?
Yeah, no problem. I don't see any disadvantage to it.
Plus Mansfield's got one.
I just,
Oh, so we need 2.
I think we'll just wait for feedback from the other boards and
Okay.
Do we need to do that, though? If
We don't.
we feel that it's
Well,
beneficial?
No, I think it's good. I like the idea of if a board chooses not to do it, and, I mean, we probably have to put some requirement that, right, the board needs to vote on whether or not that they accept remote participation.
Yeah.
Right? But I think we'll need to look at that document that Mike sent us and if we want to do tweaks or whatever to
Yeah, I
it.
mean, I'll be very honest, I didn't read it thoroughly.
Okay.
I'll email it again, so
Okay.
you have it in
Thank you.
advance.
Okay, so I'd rather not table this to our next meeting, but maybe the following, and only because the next meeting is with the fire department,
Mhm.
and they kind of take over the show.
Okay.
So I prefer to make our meeting as streamlined as possible for the next meeting.
I'm actually not able to make the next meeting. I'll be, if we had remote participation, I could dial in, but I'll be in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, it's just, usually the meetings where the fire department's gonna do their penning and stuff, we kind of make it a bare bones selectmen's meeting.
Sure.
Get our necessities taken care of, and then kind of turn it over to make it the Chief Schleicher show.
Excellent.
So maybe we pick up
One
on-
last time.
Yes. Okay, town manager's report.
Just to give you an update on the West Main Street sewer project, the contractor began the installation of the 12-inch gravity sewer line on Fillmore Drive on July 24th, and they'll be working for 3 more weeks before they get out to Route 140. And once they hit Route 140, they'll go to night work. And they plan to have a second crew perform saw cutting work on West Main Street, starting at Fernandez Drive and heading west. And that will be done between 9 and 3 o'clock each day. And the sewer installation on the state highway will be at night between the hours of 9 and 5 a.m. And the second crew is currently tentatively scheduled to commence Sunday night, August 18th, where the saw cutting has been completed. So they won't be doing saw cutting at night, they'll be doing that during the day. But they will be doing the gravity sewer installation at night.
Questions?
I just appreciated that you had forwarded these notes out. That was great to be able to have informed conversations with people who are curious about the signs. So if you could continue to do that as they meet, I think they're meeting again, next
week.
Wednesday, right? Great.
Are you talking about the Weston and Sampson one?
Yeah.
The Weston and Sampson one?
What's that?
The Weston and Sampson update, the 2-week update
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they provided? I just asked if that's what Jack was talking about.
Yeah.
So, hey, Mike, can I ask you on that? Like, I noticed that, that Frank and Luke are on here, but Scott's not on here. Can they get, like, the entire crew?
On
as
there.
part- Yeah, like, can they reach out to Luke to get everybody's email that should from the Water and Sewer Commission be on there?
What is that in the emails?
Yes, the
I
updates?
think they were probably just hitting the chairman and the superintendent.
Right.
Right. But I think it would probably help them, like it helps us to just, all of us get it so that we're informed at the same time.
Yeah.
Can we ask them
And
that?
Luke may forward it to the
We-
rest of the board members, too.
I know he doesn't, because I actually forwarded it to Scott, and he said he hadn't seen it. That's why I asked if we can get them on there, too. I mean, they're, similar to us, it certainly helps with the selectmen email that we all get something at the same time.
And on the East Main Street project, that went out to bid, well, it was advertised, July 26th, so that is moving forward. And the Campbell House was demolished this week. I was surprised when I went there Monday morning, when they had just started, and there were signs out front, no parking, and there were at least 10 cars in the parking lot, and the playground was full. But
Oh, no.
so the building inspector had to have the police go down and tell people they had to leave, they couldn't be there while the demo was going on. But that has been completed and going to be loomed and seeded. And then on the solar procurement, we had a conference call with Cadmus, who will be our consultant on the procurement. That's who we used before on the Hill Street landfill solar project. And so they'll be working with us on developing a solar facility on John Scott Boulevard behind the Water and Sewer Department, and also the police station's looking to put a canopy up with solar panels on it over the parking lot. So they'll work with us on the RFQ, developing it, pre-bid meetings, then reviewing the responses to the RFQ from all the companies to give us a list of what they feel is the best, and then working with us on a contract with those companies once we decide which ones are the best for the town.
And how big are these?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
That's one of the things they're going to have to determine. We're not sure how much space there is that's buildable down behind the Water and Sewer Department. So that's some of the things they'll be working on with them. And we'll be having bi-weekly conference calls on the projects.
Okay. And is this to power with solar some of our properties, or are we looking to sell the solar power generated?
It'll depend on the responses, and we'll weigh, like, say, behind the police station, is it a benefit for them to take the power, or do we get a higher return just renting out the space? So those are the things that'll be weighed when we see the responses. And that's what we did on the landfill. We looked at, everyone had to say to us, what are you willing to pay in rent, and what are you willing to sell the power back to us? And from that facility, it's about $300,000 a year that, between the pilot, the rent, and the power at 8 cents a kilowatt, so.
Okay. And Mike, wasn't there some discussion about putting solar on our municipal buildings?
Well, I don't know which ones, if we want.
Oh, we wouldn't want to do it
We
here.
want it here, and
No, but like the high school or even the police station?
we wouldn't want to put it on the roof. There's too much equipment up on the roof
Okay.
on that, and I'm not sure on the schools I don't think they want to put them on the roofs either. I think they were looking at carports.
You typically can't put solar on roofs unless the roof structure was designed for it, which, given when these were built, I can't imagine that there was that much extra capacity on the structural loading, so.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Selectmen's report and mail.
So I had asked Jen to put the PBC liaison update up in here, just being on there to be able to pass information back and forth openly. Their next meeting is on Monday, so the next time we meet, I'll have an update, but nothing for today.
Okay. Ms. Steele?
I have nothing.
Ms. Deli?
Mine came up during other discussions, so I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything to report. Warrants and minutes. We have 3 warrants. Chair will entertain a motion to approve payroll warrant PR 20-03 for the week ended July 27th, 2019. Warrant dated July 31st, 2019, in the amount of $638,889.18.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Or discussion?
I didn't look at it, so I'm not going to vote. I guess I just have a question about what we were signing that is not the last one on here only, or are there multiple pages and I just haven't gotten to them?
That was the one that I would have signed today.
Okay.
And at the previous meeting, Jack I had forgotten to bring notes, so I had said that I wouldn't pass in the warrants that I signed on a meeting night. I'd leave them here for you to glance through. And so you don't even have to sign that. Mary signed it out of habit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that way that's what I get, and I go through and was selecting large ticket items, things that were out of the ordinary. And I indicated last week when the warrants were available so that people could come out and take a look at them.
Yep.
They are kept in the accounting office, so if you don't make it down and you want to see, if you just go in and tell them which one you're looking for, it's right in the filing cabinet, just through the door, and they'll grab it and you can take a look at it.
Okay.
Okay?
Just to clarify something Mike had said last week, or last time we met, do we actually need to vote on these? Because I believe we gave authority to Brad.
Yeah, we're voting on my report, to you technically.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think if, like in the school committee, Sherry as chairperson, I think Sherry's still chair, just reports to the school committee, I signed this warrant, and
Yes, I mean,
so.
So we shouldn't have to vote on it then, though, then should we?
I don't think you have to vote on it.
okay, so we won't vote on it anymore. I'll just tell you that I signed it.
Just a report from Brad on what he signed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll report to you that I approved the invoice warrant AP 20-05 dated August 1st, 2019, in the amount of $1,485,334.18. And I didn't take notes, but I can tell you just from memory that the one ticket item of $820,000 was Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance. That was really the only really outstanding item. And I've signed invoice warrant AP 20-06 dated August 8th, 2019, in the amount of $86,182.85. Next meeting is August 22nd, and that's at the Norton Middle School auditorium. Ms. Steele?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, there was something that I was just reminded of. I just wanted to let everybody know that August 15th at 7 PM at the Norton Public Library is the rail trail hearing. So,
August 15th, I'll be there.
Is there anything else to come before the board? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, Shane.